Chapter 409. I Ching felt that Master had been a little strange these few days. Although there seemed to be no change on the surface, she was still that cold look. But he always felt that Master would often look at him out of the corner of her eye. Whether it was cooking, cutting, or washing vegetables, she would always sneak a glance at him. And her expression was very strange. It seemed to be probing, puzzled, inexplicable, and a little misconception of shyness. Master, is there something wrong? I Ching finally couldn't help but ask. The person who was typing on the data at the table stiffened. Her hands paused, and after a while she replied coldly, "No." She pretended as if nothing had happened, and let out a cold breath. With that said, she turned back and lowered her head to continue typing. Her head was so low that it was almost buried in the light screen in front of her. Only the side of her ear revealed a strange red color. I Ching was stunned and even more puzzled. After thinking for a while, he stepped forward and sat on the chair beside her. He pushed the pastries in his hand in her direction. The pastries this time are more troublesome to make. Is Master blaming me for being too slow and getting hungry after waiting for so long? Pastries? Vi Shining was stunned. Then she moved her big round eyes from above the light screen and stared straight at the extra plate of pastries on the table. Her eyes became even rounder, and her nose twitched. So fragrant. Is this a new invention? Yes. Master, why don't you help me try it? I Ching moved the plate in her direction again. All right, I'll try it for you. Shen Ying's expression did not change. Something flashed in her eyes. After a while, she slowly reached out to take a piece and quickly stuffed it into her mouth. In the next moment, her eyes narrowed. So delicious. It's even more delicious than before. This is my first time making this kind of pastries. What do you think, Master? I Ching asked seriously. Shen Ying opened her eyes quickly and glanced at him. Shouldn't she praise him for being so delicious? So she replied coldly, not bad. With that said, she took another piece and stuffed it into her mouth. Then, another piece, another piece. Seeing that the plate full of pastries was about to be emptied, the corner of I Ching's mouth unconsciously lifted. As long as Master likes it. His gaze instantly became soft like water, as if there was only one person left in the world in front of him. Shen Ying felt a little awkward under his gaze. She tilted her head and glanced at him. Suddenly, she recalled what Lone Moon had said earlier. Her heart skipped a beat, and she couldn't help but blush. Was he really her boyfriend? That was why he was so nice to her. He changed her clothes, changed her blanket, wiped her hands and stayed by her side. More importantly, he could cook a lot of delicious food that she had never eaten before. She glanced at him again. He was also very handsome. Having a boyfriend like him seemed not bad. Greater than or equal to for all. However, Big Sis had said that puppy love was not allowed before the age of 18. No. Didn't they say that she had lost her memory due to hibernation, and that she was actually 28 years old? Then, that shouldn't be considered puppy love, right? And didn't that person called Lone Moon say that they had already met the parents? So Big Sis had agreed? A terrifying face appeared in her mind. She subconsciously shivered. She turned back and scanned I Ching's face from head to toe. She really couldn't help but ask, "You really met my sister?" "Why do you ask that, Master?" I Ching faltered, but still nodded honestly. "Yes, I did." "Then, did she do anything to you?" I Ching shook his head. "No. But he did give Father Niu a beating." "Really?" "No. This doesn't make sense." Shen Ying's face was full of disbelief. She scanned him again and said seriously, "You're actually still alive? His legs weren't even broken." "Forget it." Shen Ying decided not to continue thinking about it. She looked at the last two pieces of pastries on the table and hesitated for a while. Gritting her teeth, she endured the pain and handed one over. "For you." "Huh?" I Ching faltered. He didn't want to eat it. "Master, I didn't." "Eat." Shen Ying did not wait for him to finish and directly stuffed it into his mouth. This was for her boyfriend. I Ching didn't pay attention. He subconsciously opened his mouth and felt a soft hand brushing past his lips. His mouth was filled with sweetness. "Master! Master!" Only then did he realize something. His whole body froze. His face instantly turned red, and his heart beat so fast that it seemed like it was about to jump out. This was the first time Master was like this. His gaze unconsciously followed the other party's hand. Shening had already picked up the last piece of pastry and stuffed it into her mouth. As she ate, she even licked the pastry crumbs on her fingertips. A moment later, he realized something. He looked down at his own hand, and his whole body stiffened. Her hand seemed to have he subconsciously turned back. Their eyes met. Instantly they understood something. The next moment, a huge wave of red climbed onto their faces. The air seemed to heat up, as if there were pink bubbles rising. When Lo Moon came in, he saw this scene. They looked at each other affectionately for 10,000 years. For a moment, he seemed to smell the smell of dog food. The corner of his mouth twitched. He could not help but burst the pink bubbles around them. Hey, have you two seen enough? They looked at each other for a minute. The two stiffened as if they were shocked. They both turned their heads. One buried his eyes in the light screen, and the other stood up. Father Neo, what's the matter? It's time to go. Go what? Lo Moon frowned. He scanned him up and down. Did you forget that today is the day of the Bo Si Immortal Gathering? It's getting late. Yu Hong and the others have already gone over early in the morning. I specially came to call you. He looked up at the sky. When Boss Land's Immortal Contest pills are ready, we'll go. As he spoke, Lan Hua walked in with a bottle of pills. Here, the pills you wanted. A total of 200 pills. Thank you for your hard work. Lo Moon took the pills from Lan Hua's hand. He took out a Dharma artifact and threw it into the air. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge 5-colored spirit bird. As it flapped its wings, layers of auspicious clouds appeared. Immortal chi surrounded it. It was like an illusion full of showiness. This was a bird that was very suitable to show off. Lo Moon raised his hand and conjured a seal. The spirit bird that the Dharma artifact transformed into flew down instantly. In an instant, it occupied more than half of the yard. Let's go. He waved at them. Oh yes, Boss Lan, you go too. Me? Lan Hua was stunned. Why should I go? He did not need to increase his cultivation. Besides, that immortal spring was useless to the demons. You must go. How could he slap them in the face if he did not go? But I still have an appointment with Brother Radish and Nephew Dandelion to find new immortal herbs today. Since when did Song Ren become your nephew? Do you have to accept it so quickly? Why don't you go? I really don't. 3 years of rent-free. Yes, Father Neo. No problem, Father Neo. He changed his words instantly. Lo Moon. I Ching. Shening. Chapter 410. The three of them mounted their swords and flew onto the bird's back. They saw that there was a lotus platform on the bird's back. It was very wide and could accommodate more than 10 people. Once they got on, the giant bird spread its wings and flew up. Along the way, it was like laying out a carpet, scattering colorful auspicious clouds and dazzling spirit light. Their appearance had to be shocking. Fortunately, he found this weapon from the warehouse last night. Lo Moon nodded in satisfaction. It was cool enough. It was just that the surroundings were too bright, and it was hard to recognize the way. Chef, look. He was just about to ask the person beside him, when he turned to find I Ching standing there in a daze. His eyes glanced at a certain someone beside him, as if he hadn't come back to his senses, his face full of lust. Lo Moon. King retard. He could only look at Lan Hua beside him. Boss Lan, have you been to the Bo Si Immortal Spring? I've been there a few times. Lan Hua released his divine perception and pointed to the left. Just fly in that direction. It's about a few hundred miles away. We'll be there in a quarter of an hour. Lo Moon changed his hand seal and flew directly in that direction. Shening frowned at the side, as if thinking of something. She opened a light screen and looked. The place you mentioned, is it here? She clicked on her wristband, and instantly a light screen appeared in front of the three of them. On it was a map. It was the terrain of the Bo Si. She raised her hand and pointed to a red dot on the far left. The place we're going, is it near this marked point? Lan Hua was shocked by the sudden appearance of the map. Thinking of Xin Ying's ability, he didn't think much and looked carefully at the illusory map. He nodded and said, yes, this is the place where the immortal spring appeared. Xin Ying's frown deepened. What's wrong? Lo Moon asked. What's wrong with this place? Shunning turned off the map on the light screen and turned to look at him. 3 days ago, I scanned the data here and received a set of abnormal data signals. I've been trying to determine the specific direction. It can't be there, right? Lone Moon was shocked. Wait, you've been staring at that light screen these few days. You're investigating this? What else can I do? Shunning turned and glanced at him coldly. Do you think I'm just fooling around like the rest of you? Can't you speak properly? How am I not doing proper work? And you, a person who eats 5 meals a day, how dare you say such things? What exactly are those abnormalities? Is it an invasion? Do you think invaders are like cabbages in the north? A few dozen kilograms at a time? Shunning gave him a look of disdain and explained coldly. My initial guess is that it's just a spatial fold or a fault. It won't have too much of an impact on the plane. We can only be sure when we get there. What? What the hell was that? Don't understand. Shunning tilted her head and glanced at the two of them, who were in a daze. This question was indeed a little difficult to understand. Back then, she had also studied for several months. Let me put it this way. They were still newbies. As a manager, she couldn't destroy their confidence. Thus, she took a step forward and said word by word in a friendly tone. With your almost 0 IQ, it's very difficult for me to explain it to you. Lone Moon. I Ching. Swish swish, the two heard the sound of knives stabbing. Today was a good day to be a manager. For all. What exactly are you talking about? Lan Hua, who was at the side, was confused. He looked back and forth between the cold Shen-Ing and Lone Moon, who was already on the verge of exploding. Taking a deep breath, Lone Moon suppressed the anger in his heart. As an adult, he couldn't be calculative with children. He turned to look at Lan Hua and patted his shoulder. It's better not to know. Otherwise he would be angered to death. Lan Hua. Wuxia Immortal Gathering. Immortals gathered in the sea of flowers surrounded by immortal qi. There were immortals from various countries of the Wuxia, and there were also immortals from other continents who had received the news and rushed over to join in the fun. After all, the Wuxia Immortal Gathering was held after more than 3,000 years. It was a rare opportunity. At a glance, all the immortals sitting there had high cultivation levels. The lowest was a Stygian immortal, and most were exalted immortals. Yu Hong looked at the immortals carefully before turning to the disciple beside her. Are all the country emperors here? The country emperor of East Sui hasn't arrived yet, the disciple answered. Yu Hong frowned, and a hint of depression rose in her heart. In the next moment, they heard a bird cry that pierced through the clouds. The originally noisy crowd quietened down and looked up at the sky. They saw a huge spirit bird flying in their direction. Auspicious clouds filled the sky wherever it passed, bringing with it a shocking suppression. Sect Master is here. Yu Hong was delighted and nodded to the disciple beside her. The disciple immediately turned and shouted, Sect. Wuxia Celestial Emperor is here. The colorful spirit bird landed, and the country emperors all turned to look. They saw Lan Hua at the front, and then I Ching at the back. Instantly, their faces lit up, and they all looked like they were watching a good show. The four of them walked down from the bird. Only then did the crowd turn and bow to them. Greetings, Celestial Emperor. The person opposite them did not respond. Lone Moon just waved his hand, and the huge bird turned into a white light, turning back into a Dharma artifact and flying back into his hand. Only then did the four of them walk towards the main seat. The country emperors exchanged a look, and their gazes swept back and forth between Lan Hua and I Ching. Their eyes were full of excitement, especially when they saw the two of them walking towards the main seat. They could not suppress the excitement in their hearts. They did not know if the immortal officials who came to make arrangements first were ignorant, but there was actually only one main seat. The relationship between Lan Hua and that celestial emperor I Ching was very subtle. One was the real Wuxia Celestial Emperor, who was elected by all the continent's emperors, and the other was the current Celestial Emperor, who had long been in charge of the entire Wuxia. The key was that the two of them appeared at the immortal gathering together. Although the main seat was a small matter, it represented the real position of the Celestial Emperor. Who would sit on it? The more the country emperors thought about it, the more excited they became. They could not wait for the two of them to fight on the spot. Indeed, the two of them walked side by side towards the main seat. Seeing that they were getting closer, the two of them had no intention of turning around and walked all the way to the main stage. It's coming, it's coming. The country emperors subconsciously held their breath and stared at the two of them as they walked straight to the main seat. And then, the two of them turned around. Neither of them sat down, one to the left and the other to the right, and walked to the two sides of the chair respectively. And the young female immortal who followed behind the two of them sat on the chair sideways. Perhaps because the chair was too high, she even kicked her legs twice before sitting steadily. She looked up at the people present coldly. The country emperors. The immortals. What the hell? What happened to the big fight that was promised? What happened to the two emperors not getting along? What happened to the saying that two tigers cannot share a mountain? Where did this tigress come from? But the people from the invincible immortal palace looked as if it was a matter of course, including I Ching and Lan Hua. I Ching was already used to standing behind Shining. As for Lan Hua, he had already turned to find Yu Hong, who was beside him, and asked tentatively, "Sister Little Hong, Little Black asked me to ask you, can he get lost?" Oh. Lan Hua immediately shrank back and silently lit a candle for a certain person who was chased out of his home for a few months. I've tried my best, brother. Chapter 411. All the country emperors were stunned by Invincible Heavenly Palace's sudden move. They stared blankly at the person sitting on the main seat, unable to react for a moment. Even when Lone Moon politely asked everyone not to be overly courteous, as well as the large part of the official speech, they did not hear it clearly. They still maintained their bowing posture for a long time. He glanced left and right at Lan Hua and I Ching, then at the person on the main seat. They exchanged glances and were about to ask. The immortal chi in the surroundings suddenly began to thicken. The immortal spring is about to appear. Someone exclaimed. Everyone instantly forgot about the woman's identity and turned to look expectantly at the center of the hall. Even the immortals standing in the middle hurriedly stepped aside. The center of the immortal gathering instantly became empty. The surrounding immortal chi also became thicker and thicker. As though it was being attracted by something, it began to gather towards the center. For a time, the center of the arena was shrouded in white immortal chi, faintly showing signs of materializing. Just as the immortal chi was gathering, a white light suddenly flashed in the middle, like a bolt of lightning streaking across the dense immortal chi. Ha! Shining, who was sitting in the main seat with a cold expression, suddenly turned to look at the center and frowned thoughtfully. Just now, the white light only shone for a moment before it disappeared like lightning. In the next moment, the sound of flowing water could be heard. The dense immortal energy finally condensed into water droplets, forming a spiral and gathering in the center. The white mist-like immortal energy in the surroundings also slowly dissipated. In less than the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, a clear spring appeared in the originally empty field. The sparkling spring water reflected the sunlight and seemed to be sprinkled with a layer of gold. Moreover, the entire spring was floating at a height of 1 meter in the middle. Looking from above, one could even see the flowers and plants on the ground. The immortals looked excited, and many of them even subconsciously picked up their cups, waiting for the Bo Si Emperor to speak and start drinking. One had to know that the immortal spring only appeared once every 100 years. Every time it appeared, it would only appear for an hour. If it was too late, the immortal spring would turn invisible again. Even if they wanted to drink it, they wouldn't be able to. Lone Moon had no intention of making things difficult for them. The immortal spring could indeed increase immortal power, which was very beneficial for cultivation, but it could not directly increase one's cultivation. In fact, its effects were not much different from a top-grade spiritual supplement pill, but the latter was a bit more difficult to obtain. So he directly stepped forward and announced loudly, "Those who come are guests. Since you are already here, there is no need to stand on ceremony." As he spoke, he immediately cast a water manipulation art. In the next moment, the water in the spring transformed into hundreds of streams that flew into the cups of the various immortals. Fellow immortals, please. Only then did everyone stand up and return the greeting. Thank you, Your Majesty. May I know which sovereign emperor is this immortal official using to invite everyone to the spring? Suddenly, a sarcastic voice rang out and a cyan-robed man flew down from the sky. Behind him were tens of ascendant immortals. When he landed, he did not look at the platform. Instead, he looked at the various country emperors and said, "Fellow country emperors, you have arrived early. I did not know that the returning imperial monarch you fellows were talking about would be so impatient. To think that he would not even wait for everyone to arrive before he started drinking the spring water." Shening frowned and turned to look at Chef beside her. Who is this idiot who looks like he's here to cause trouble, and whose face is filled with the word cannon fodder? I Ching was stunned by the long list of adjectives. He replied in a low voice, "Master, this person should be the emperor of East Sui Yutsong. I heard that he only became a young emperor 1,000 years ago." Oh. Shening glanced at him and lost interest. Lone Mun's eyes narrowed. Finally, they were going to start trouble. "Young emperor, you. What are you talking about?" Another country emperor at the side scolded loudly, but there was not much anger in his expression. "This Wuxia immortal gathering. We are here to congratulate Emperor I Ching on his return to the throne. You shouldn't have come late. How can you talk nonsense?" "What Emperor I Ching?" He snorted and glared at everyone disdainfully. "I only know that our Wuxia has Emperor Lan Hua. Since when did we have another Emperor I Ching?" The country emperor who retorted looked angry and shouted even louder. "How dare you? Emperor I Ching has already taken over Wuxia 3,000 years ago. He is the rightful emperor of Wuxia. This country emperor has already said that that happened 3,000 years ago. I have only taken over East Sui for 1,000 years. That's why I only know Emperor Lan Hua, and not this Emperor I Ching. You. Don't forget. Who is it who fought against the demons and guarded the immortal and demonic realms for the past 1,000 years? As for that Emperor I Ching, I don't know what he has done. I will never acknowledge such a person." The country emperors fell silent. They all looked angry but helpless to refute. Lone Moon looked back and forth between the two groups of people, and did not interrupt. One played the bad cop, the others played the good cop. The division of labor was quite clear. Emperor Lan Hua. The one called Yutsong had already walked straight towards Lan Hua. He cupped his fists and said with a face full of loyalty and determination, "Don't worry. Even if I have to sacrifice this life of mine, I will never acknowledge any returning emperor." "Huh." Lan Hua, who was hesitating on how to persuade Yu Hong, and was not listening at all, paused. "What did you say?" "Monarch," Yutsong said even more solemnly. "This Wuxia is yours. You deserve the position of monarch." As he spoke, he turned to look at the main seat and pointed there. "This person who popped out of nowhere is completely unworthy." Halfway through his words, he suddenly stopped. He looked at the cold-faced woman sitting high up on the main seat, and could not react for a long while. "Who is this? Didn't they say that Emperor I Ching was a man? This was different from the shadow recording stone." He subconsciously turned to look at the other country emperors. What was going on? This was different from what they had agreed on. How was he supposed to continue singing? The other country emperors were all confused. They did not even have time to ask. Lan Hua, who came back to his senses, finally understood what he meant. Was he asking him to fight for the seat with good heart? He immediately jumped up. "Hey, don't talk nonsense. Who wants to sit in that seat? I have never thought of sitting. I like to stand. I was born to like to stand. What can you do about it?" Asking Good Heart to give up her seat for him. That would be terrible. Are you trying to make me go bankrupt? I'll kill you. In the next moment, he felt Lan Hua's murderous aura coming towards him. Yutsong was shocked and stunned. For a moment, he did not know what he meant. But he had to continue acting according to the script. He said in a low voice, "Emperor, you have been managing the Wuxia for so many years. Are you really willing to hand over thousands of years of hard work to someone else?" "Wait, who said that I was managing the Wuxia in the past?" Lan Hua looked at him, as if he was looking at a retard. He scanned the person in front of him from head to toe. "I have never managed it. He was just a lodger." Yutsong. All the country emperors. What? What was going on? Had they seen a ghost in these thousands of years? Chapter 412. The country emperors were confused. The one in charge was not Emperor Lan Hua. Could it be? For a moment, all eyes turned to look at I Ching on the right. I Ching frowned and replied, "It's not my business." Everyone was even more confused. Someone asked subconsciously, "If the two emperors are not in charge, then who is it?" Lan Hua and I Ching exchanged a look, and in the next moment, all the invincible sect disciples answered in unison, "It's Father Niao." "Huh? Everyone. What the hell? Who is Father Niao?" "I am." Lone Moon stepped forward and smiled like a sunflower at everyone. The immortals were stunned, but the country emperors recognized that this person seemed to be the original elder of Invincible Sect, young Emperor Lone Moon. On the day I Ching became emperor, he was the one in charge. But Yu Tsong did not recognize him. His eyes turned and he scolded, "Ridiculous! Who are you? Our Bo-Si is also one of the great 10 continents. How can we let a mere young emperor be in charge?" "Is that so?" Lone Moon could not be bothered to watch them continue. He adjusted his cultivation and directly released his suppressive force. In the next moment, everyone felt their bodies become heavy. An overwhelming and terrifying suppressive force swept over. Not to mention the other immortals. Even the country emperors felt their blood boiling, their minds unsteady. They instantly had the urge to bow down and worship. They could not muster any thoughts of resistance. Especially Yu Tsong, who was the closest. He was directly pressed down to his knees with a thud. His entire body was almost pressed down and rubbed against the ground. Cold sweat instantly covered his entire body. His heart was filled with shock and boundless fear immediately swept over him. This terrifying suppressive force was definitely not just from Celestial Emperor. Who exactly was he? "It seems like country emperor you has some opinions about me?" Lone Moon's smile deepened. Yu Tsong's face became even paler. He felt his blood boiling, as if he would be crushed under this terrifying suppressive force in the next moment. He immediately replied in a panic, "No, no. I don't dare." All the country emperors turned pale. They suddenly recalled the day more than 3,000 years ago, when the country emperors of the 10 continents besieged Invincible Sect. Suddenly, a chasm that almost severed the entire celestial realm appeared. To this day, no one knew who did it. Over the years, there had been some speculations on the various continents. At that time, the Invincible Sect might have been hiding a person that even the celestial emperors could not afford to offend. This was also why after the Invincible Sect took over the Bo-Si, even though the celestial emperor had disappeared for thousands of years, the other mainlands did not dare to have any designs on them. From the looks of it now, could it be that the person who drove the immortals away and drew the heavenly chasm was this person who seemed to be only a young emperor? Was that why Emperor Lan Hua denied it so quickly when Yu Tsong challenged him? Because he and Emperor I Ching had never been the ones to make decisions. The one who actually controlled the Bo-Si continent was Lone Moon? The more the country emperors thought about it, the more terrified they became. Their faces turned pale, and it was unknown whether it was because of the pressure or because they were frightened by their own imaginations. But cold sweat poured down their faces. Of course, Lone Moon did not know that these country emperors' brains had gone to the sky. The pressure swept across the entire place, and when it was sufficient, he retracted it. Ever since he became an assistant, he felt that cultivation was not a problem. If he wanted to become a god, he could become a god. If he wanted to become an immortal, he could become an immortal. There was no pressure at all in advancing. Forget it. Fellow immortals, don't forget that this trip is to participate in the immortal gathering and drink the immortal spring together. This immortal spring will disappear in an hour. Don't forget what we're here for. Lone Moon twirled the flute in his hand and turned to look at Yu Tsong, who was closest to him. "Country Emperor, don't you agree?" Yu Tsong did not dare to retort. He was really frightened by the pressure just now and had long lost his arrogant look. Even though the pressure was not there, he still felt his legs turn to jelly. He hurriedly cupped his fists and said, Yes, fellow immortal is right. I also know that everyone is wholeheartedly thinking about the Bo-Si. That's why you are so concerned about the position of the Celestial Emperor. Lone Moon scanned the crowd and said earnestly, "But it's just a title after all. We've never taken it to heart. For us immortal cultivators, working hard to improve our cultivation is the right path." Everyone broke out in a cold sweat and praised him. "Don't worry. Lan Hua and I Ching are all concerned about the immortals of the Boci." Lone Moon's eyes narrowed as he continued. "That's why we invited all immortals today to reconvene the Boci Immortal Gathering and drink the immortal spring together to improve our cultivation." And the Celestial Emperor considered that the immortal gathering had been suspended for many years and missed a good opportunity, so he had long found a way to compensate everyone. As he spoke, he directly took out a bottle and opened it. Instantly, a few beams of light flashed and a dozen elixirs flew out. They spun in the air, as if they were alive, and floated in front of him. The elixir was faintly glowing with a faint gold color. A refreshing elixir fragrance wafted over. All the immortals present were energized. The surrounding immortal chi was unimaginably thick. Even the water in the immortal spring was surging. "This is the immortal contest elixir," someone exclaimed. The entire place was instantly in an uproar. "It really is the immortal contest elixir. Only the immortal contest elixir has such thick immortal chi. Isn't it impossible to refine this elixir without a divine-grade deviant fire? I didn't expect that there are still immortal contest elixirs left in this world. And a dozen of them." Lone Moon glanced at everyone with satisfaction. In these few thousand years that Celestial Emperor I Ching left, he had a fortuitous encounter and obtained a few immortal contest elixirs. Just right to take advantage of this immortal gathering, to give them to all the immortals. As soon as he finished, everyone's eyes began to shine. How could they still remember to sow discord? They stared straight at those elixirs, unable to move their eyes away. But Lone Moon's tone changed. "The quality of these elixirs is average. If they are used by those below young emperor, they can directly raise their cultivation by one big realm." A big realm. All the immortals took a deep breath, their eyes even brighter. Instead, it was the 15 country emperors whose expressions changed. Instantly, they had a bad premonition. Indeed, they only heard him continue. "The number of these elixirs is limited. There are only 15. Coincidentally, there are 15 countries in my Boci. To show fairness, may the country emperors please choose one person each to receive this elixir." Lone Moon's eyes curved into crescents as he suddenly thought of something and added, "Oh, that's right. It's best to take this elixir directly with the immortal spring water. The effects will be the best." As soon as he said that, the immortals of the other continents were naturally envious, hating that they were not from the Boci, while the exalted immortals brought by the emperors of the various countries were excited. He had just said that it would only be useful for cultivators below the young emperor level, which meant that the pill would eventually fall into their hands. This was a pill that could raise one's cultivation level by a whole level, and anyone who consumed it would become an emperor. Who wouldn't be tempted? On the other hand, the faces of the various country emperors darkened. They instantly understood what he meant, and could not help but want to vomit blood. It was true that the immortal contest pill could directly increase one's cultivation level, but it was not something that only exalted immortals could use. However, it was not as obvious for young emperors and above. He purposely made it clear that it was for the exalted immortals to use, because he did not want to give it to them directly. However, they couldn't openly refute that the monarch could use it as well. Otherwise, it would seem like they were greedy. In addition, their purpose for coming here was to provoke the two imperial monarchs. In order to prevent any accidents from happening, each of them brought at least 10 ascendant immortals with them. And this immortal contest pill was only one for each country emperor. Who should they give it to? This was not an ordinary elixir, but one that could raise one's cultivation level directly. Who wouldn't be jealous? In addition, those who could cultivate to the level of exalted immortals would more or less have some power behind them. Giving it to anyone would cause others to be unhappy. Moreover, the other party had clearly pointed out that it had to be taken with the immortal spring water. Wasn't this telling them that they had to eat it now? He did not give them the slightest chance to bring it back and manipulate it internally. Chapter 413. Have all the country emperors made up their minds? Lone Moon grinned like a fox. Watching the commotion unfold, he urged, "This immortal spring is about to disappear. Everyone, if you've thought it through, let your disciples collect the elixirs. Why don't we start with country emperor Yu?" He turned to look at the person closest to him. Yu Tsang, who was suddenly named, stiffened but could not say no. He resisted the urge to vomit blood and turned to look at the people behind him. He clenched his fists and pointed at the person on his right. "You go." Indeed, the other's eyes darkened. With Yu Tsang taking the lead, the other country emperors also chose an exalted immortal. In a short while 15 people were chosen. The atmosphere changed instantly. Apart from the 15 excited immortals in front, the other exalted immortals all looked disappointed, regretful, or resentful. Lone Moon turned his hand and cast a water manipulation spell. 15 streams of water flew out of the immortal spring and wrapped around the 15 elixirs. They flew in front of everyone. Their eyes lit up. They caught the elixirs with both hands and swallowed them. The elixirs need 3 days to fully take effect. Everyone remember to go into seclusion first. Everyone nodded in unison. The looks in the audience's eyes changed completely. There was even a polite exalted immortal who stepped forward and bowed deeply in the direction of Lone Moon and I Ching. "Thank you, Celestial Emperor. Thank you, fellow immortal Father Niao." Once he said that, the others seemed to be enlightened and bowed in unison. "Thank you, Celestial Emperor. Thank you, fellow immortal Father Niao." 14 Lone Moon, I Ching, Shining. Invincible sect people. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He gritted his teeth and said, "My Dao name is Lone Moon. Scram, how dare you call me Father Niao?" Fu *K. Everyone could only change their words and thank him again. The elixirs were finished. The country emperors did not have the mood to stay any longer. Especially Yu Tsang. He stood up and left before the immortal spring disappeared. The other country emperors also stood up and hurried back with their people. They were probably rushing back to appease the exalted immortals, who did not get the elixirs to prevent them from rebelling. Lone Moon did not stay either. He let them go. Soon, they would discover that the ones they really needed to guard against were not those who didn't take the pills, but those who did. The countries of the Bo Sea would probably be in chaos for a while. Do you know about the struggle for the throne? 0. An hour later, the immortal spring had completely disappeared. Only Invincible Sect, the organizer, was left in the entire venue. Lone Moon turned and told everyone to pack up and go home. "Shining, let's go back." "You want to get off work without even finishing your work?" Shining turned to look at him. Suddenly, she kicked her legs and jumped down. He walked straight to the center of the field, circled around the spot where the immortal spring had just appeared, and said in a low voice, "This is just the beginning." "What do you mean?" Lone Moon paused. "Master, did you discover something?" I Ching could not help but ask. Shining looked at them with a strange expression. A moment later, she moved her lips. She seemed to hesitate for a moment before saying, "Have your 5 senses been dispelled? Didn't you feel anything strange just now?" The two of them felt suffocated. They tried their best to deceive the dagger in her words. "You're saying that there's something wrong with the immortal spring?" Half. Shining frowned and said, "There's no problem at the back, but during the process of its formation, there was a moment of spatial chaos. I'm not sure of the exact reason. I don't have enough power now, so quickly go back to the time when it was just formed. I want to confirm it again." "What?" Lone Moon was stunned. "Go back to what?" "Of course it's the time." Shining paused. She turned and scanned them from head to toe. "You don't know how?" The two of them exchanged a look and shook their heads. "Then spatial reconstruction." "What's that?" "Bending restoration." "What restoration?" "Partial resetting, right?" "Huh." Xin Ying's expression instantly froze. She suddenly felt that these two assistants of hers were seriously lacking in basic knowledge. They were indeed pure novices. Thinking back, she had to train for a long time before she knew these things. She had to motivate them to learn. She stepped forward and said word by word, "What use do I have you?" "Lone Moon, I Ching. Heart-piercing too. 0-inch master. Apart from the methods you mentioned just now, Are there any other ways to find out the reason? I Ching stepped forward and asked seriously. Shenning glanced at him. As if thinking of something, she subconsciously looked away and said, I just felt something strange just now. I can't be sure unless I look again. Look again. I Ching seemed to have thought of something. His eyes widened. He exchanged a look with Lone Moon beside him and said in unison, Illusion spell. Lone Moon immediately activated his immortal chi to cast the spell. In an instant, the scenery around them rippled like water. Suddenly, a series of illusions appeared around them. It was exactly the scene from an hour ago. The illusion spell was originally a detection spell. It gathered the remnant aura around them and used the form of an illusion to see what happened before. If they did not deliberately hide it, everything that happened within 3 days would appear. The image of the immortal spring just now reappeared beside the three of them. In order to see it more clearly, Lone Moon set up an array and turned the center into an illusion. Instantly, the scene before them became clearer. It was like what was happening right now. In the illusion, large amounts of immortal chi gathered towards the center, forming a large white fog. Shenning hurriedly opened the light screen and began to operate it. Immediately, a large amount of data flashed across the screen. The immortal chi also became thicker and thicker. Because they were standing in the center, their bodies were already covered in white. Just as it was about to form, that familiar white light flashed again. The immortal chi turned into a spring. Found it. It's this. Shenning suddenly said. Lone Moon retracted the spell and removed the spells around them. What's going on? Shenning tapped on the light screen. Immediately, it enlarged in front of the two of them. There was a picture on it. It was the scene where the white light appeared just now. The light looked like lightning and appeared right in the center. But on closer inspection, they could see a faint blue color in the middle of the white light. What was this? A crack in the fault of the realm? Shenning explained. At that moment, an internal transportation passage was opened here. Internal? Lone Moon hesitated. Internal transportation passage. Wasn't that the realm gate? He was shocked. He turned to look at Chef beside him. The same thought flashed across their minds. Chef, search for the aura of the immortal spring just now. Open the realm gate that connects here again. I Ching nodded. He closed his eyes and conjured a seal with both hands. Immediately, an array appeared beneath his feet. In a short while, the space in front of the three of them twisted. A crack appeared and slowly opened. Instantly, large amounts of chaotic aura surged out from inside. There was immortal chi and spirit chi. The three of them were shocked. They stared straight at the realm gate. Compared to the previous realm gates that connected to the mortal and divine realms, which were either white or black, the light in this realm gate was actually blue. Which realm did this lead to? Chapter 414. What's going on? Why are there two types of immortal and spirit chi in this realm gate? Lone Moon looked confused. Suddenly, he thought of something and his eyes widened. It can't be the same as the other realm, right? The small world that trapped Meng Hong, and the rest was a realm where both immortal and spirit chi existed. I don't think so. I Ching sensed the spirit chi in the realm gate and said in a low voice, This immortal chi is very weak. It should be from the formation of the immortal spring. There shouldn't be any immortal chi in the small world outside this realm gate. Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief then frowned. No matter what, it must be a trap left behind by the god fiend. There might be something waiting for us there. He activated his assistant seal, and then used a spell to investigate, only to find that the immortal chi disappeared the moment it entered the gate. There was no way of knowing where it led to. How can this be? He looked shocked. I can't find out which small world this realm gate is from. Chef, did you find anything strange when you opened the gate? I Ching shook his head. No, it was the same as when other realm gates opened. Then where did this lead to? It seems like we can only find out where it leads to if we go in. Lone Moon took another look at the realm gate in front of him. His expression darkened. He glanced at Shenning worriedly. Shenning, are you coming with us? Although this is not as serious as a plain invasion, your powers have not recovered yet. Shenning turned back to look at him. Was he worried about her? He was a qualified assistant. He deserved to be encouraged. With your kindergarten-level IQ, you have so much confidence. Do you think I'm as stupid as you and can't protect myself? Don't worry, I'll protect you. For all, Loneman. I Ching. Just go along, why did you have to stab me? The two of them frowned. They would get used to stabbing people in the back after a while. On the other side, Yu Hong and the disciples had already packed up. Sect Master Elder, we're done. What's that? Yu Hong looked at the realm gate that suddenly appeared in the middle of them in surprise, but did not ask. Sect Master had her reasons for doing things anyway. Are we going back to the Heavenly Palace now? It's all right. Yu Hong, bring the disciples back with Lan Hua. Lone Moon handed over the Dharma artifact of the flamboyant rainbow bird and said, We still have some matters to attend to. We will catch up with you as soon as possible. Yes. Yu Hong nodded and took the Dharma artifact without hesitation. She led the disciples up the bird's back and flew away. Come back soon. Boss Lan also waved at them and continued to persevere as he moved closer to Yu Hong to put in a good word for her. Well, after all, he had received a lot of refining materials from Little Black. Little Red, why don't you see Little Black once? Just once. Get lost. One more word, and I'll kick you off the bird. Low-level tenant of Invincible Sect Lan. Let's go. Lone Moon waved his hand and looked at the master and disciple who were nearer to the realm gate. He instructed, Chef, hold him tight. Don't lose it again. I Ching suddenly thought of a certain person's dark history. He nodded and turned to hold the hand of the person beside him out of habit. Master, be careful. Shining stiffened. She felt a warmth in her palms. A familiar warmth entered her palms and went straight to the bottom of her heart. Even her face seemed to heat up. Was this holding hands? It's unnecessary. It was very normal for a boyfriend and girlfriend to hold hands. She was not confused at all. Oh, ****. Oh, alright, let's hurry up and go. Lone Moon urged them again and set up a defensive array around the three of them. If it is really as Shunning said, and the Immortal Springs data is abnormal, there must be something wrong with this small world. As he conjured a seal, he added, Let's hope this time won't be like the last time when Shining went into hibernation again. With that, Shining, who was about to step into the realm gate, suddenly froze. She stopped a step away from the realm gate and pulled I Ching, who was beside her. Lone Moon, who was behind her, did not stop in time and almost bumped into her. Holy shit, why did you suddenly stop? Shen Ying's expression remained cold. She turned to look at the people behind her. We're not going. It was not just Lone Moon, even I Ching was stunned. Why? Did she have to drop the ball at the last minute? Master, did you notice anything strange? Lone Moon's heart tightened. He could not help but feel nervous. What did you discover? Shen Ying's frown deepened. She looked like she did not know what to say. Her assistant was very inquisitive. She should convince them properly. Because. She took a deep breath and looked at Father Neo with a serious expression that she had never shown before. You just helped me set up a flag that I will die if I go out, so I've decided not to go. Lone Moon. I Ching. What kind of stupid reason was that? Did she have to be so childish? Shening had already brought up the light screen. She quickly clicked a few times, and the interface immediately closed. Be it in movies or dramas, the main character always died this way. Cherish your life and stay away from flags. Wait, didn't you say that there's a problem with the data? Lone Moon felt full of grievance. He was wrong. This Shening who released the poison was even more unreliable than the lazy one before. If we don't go, how do we know what's wrong there? Shening looked up. This was a good question. As a manager, it was time to let the newbies understand the diversity of problem solving. Who said we can't investigate if we don't go? She still said coldly. Even if you don't have knowledge, you have to have some common sense. Even if you don't have common sense, please keep some memory. Use your tiny brains to think carefully. What's the correct process of monitoring a small world? What the hell was the correct process? The two of them paused. They suddenly thought of something. No wonder it was the divine realm. There's medicine to cure your stupidity. Shening nodded. She always praised her subordinates. That's right. If they just wanted to find out which small world this special realm gate led to, they could just go to the divine realm and take a look. Let's go back. Lone Moon immediately cut through the void and opened a passage to the divine realm. In an instant, the three of them were already under the vast starry sky. Lone Moon turned and scanned the densely packed starry sky. Shening, quickly find out which small world it is? Shening was just about to bring up the light screen. She thought of something and turned to look at the two of them. You can't find it? Isn't this to save time? Lone Moon waved the wristband. I'm not as familiar with this wristband as you are. What's more, this is your divine realm. Who said we have to use this wristband to find it? Shening looked at the two of them in surprise. This is technology from another plane. It has nothing to do with this world. I'm only using it because I'm used to it. You don't even. She stopped mid-sentence. She suddenly understood something. She looked at the two of them. Don't tell me. You don't know what assistant authority is at all. What? Chapter 415. What do you mean? Lone Moon hesitated. Wasn't assistant authority a cheat? He could adjust his cultivation at will, and was not restricted by the rules. Xin Ying's expression became even more strange. She scanned the two of them from head to toe. After a moment of silence, she said, Let's put it this way. She turned and pointed at the 3,000 worlds in front of them. What do you see? Lone Moon and I Ching exchanged a look. After a while they replied, The galaxy? Xin Ying's eyes widened and her expression turned even colder. She looked like she wanted to expel them. A moment later, she sighed and shook her head. I thought you could be saved, but you really are blind. What should they do? It turned out that it wasn't that her assistant had a poor foundation, but that she had no foundation at all. Sigh, it's so tough. The two of them. Didn't you say that this starry sky is the three realms, the original appearance of this plane? Lone Moon could not help but ask. You can indeed see the entire plane from here. Shening frowned and thought for a while before saying in a low voice, But who said that this plane originally looked like this? Isn't it? The more they listened, the more confused they became. Lone Moon stepped forward and said, Weren't you the one who turned the divine realm into this? I transformed the plane into the starry sky out of habit. Shening pulled out a star chart of the previous plane and explained. The appearance is similar. It's just convenient to manage. But this is the immortal spirit plane. It's fundamentally different from our original place. The principle was similar, but there would always be differences, and it would not always be suitable. Besides, you're my assistants, so you have authority over this place. You don't have to follow my habits. You mean to say? Lone Moon was a little confused. He waved his hand. This bracelet is actually not that useful? It has nothing to do with our assistant's abilities. Shening nodded. This is a product from another plane. Its influence on the border is limited. Lone Moon. Flips table. Degree. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I've been reading the instruction manual for months. Wait. He suddenly thought of something. Then why was it able to detect intruders before? And haven't you been using it all the time? And the band-aid you gave us to repair the plane also successfully repaired the plane crack. What band-aid? This is just a support item. Shening shook her wristband. It can only carry out simple data monitoring and calculations. It has no direct impact on this world. The only ones who can really change the plane are the managers and assistants themselves. Master is saying. I Ching seemed to have figured something out. He stepped forward and said, What could repair the plane crack back then was actually our own power. Yes. Shening nodded. Every plane is actually different. It's just that the manager is the plane itself, and the assistant maintains the plane's stability. In other words, you have the ability to control the entire plane. It's just that the method of operation is different. My sister's plane can rely on technology, but this plane, a spell. I Ching continued. What Master means is that all problems can be solved with sorcery. Lone Moon was stunned. He suddenly recalled that when they were investigating the immortal spring just now, she said a bunch of terms that he did not understand. But in the end, they were the ones who used the illusory technique to find out. It was the same effect, but the method could be different. Shening turned around with some appreciation. He was indeed her boyfriend. Full marks for understanding. He was indeed outstanding. He needed to be praised. Greater than over equal to. Looks like the water in your brains has finally dried. I Ching. Lone Moon. The corners of their mouths twitched. They exchanged a look at each other, then turned to look at the starry sky. Indeed, compared to the complicated operation of the wristband, sorcery was much easier for them. But in such a huge plane, even if we use the detection sorcery, it's impossible to immediately find that small world with the special realm gate, Lone Moon said with a frown. There are so many sorcery in this 3 realms, but none of them can be so fast. We can't just go and learn at the last minute. He stopped in the middle of his sentence. Wait. Speaking of which, the so-called sorcery was originally created by primordial chaos and God Fiend according to the rules of the plane. And the assistant was already a person who had already broken away from the rules. As long as he understood the rules themselves, which was the heavenly Tao of this world, it was not impossible for him to create a never-before-seen sorcery. His heart jumped. He turned back to look at Chef. Both their eyes lit up. Obviously, they had also thought of this. Try it. Yes. I Ching nodded. The 2 of them took a step forward, closed their eyes and released their divine perception. They scanned the starry sky in front of them. Instantly, the 2 of them felt like they were in an ocean. Wherever their divine perception reached, it was vast and boundless, as if it could not be reached at all. The 2 of them released their divine perception to the limit, but still could not reach the stars in the starry sky. It was as if it was far beyond their reach, far beyond the reach of their divine perception. In a short while, their foreheads were already covered in sweat. They looked like they were in pain. Are you guys surnamed Donkey? Shening suddenly spoke. Have you forgotten who you are? The 2 of them paused. Only then did they remember the assistant seal in their bodies. They directly sensed for a moment. Almost instantly, their divine perception, which was a little difficult to extend, instantly spread out like a net, covering the entire starry sky. The originally vast and boundless 3,000 realms seemed to have suddenly shrunk. They could see everything clearly. One by one, the small worlds were incomparably clear, flashing in front of their eyes. What was amazing was that these small worlds were not like the transparent spheres when Shening controlled them. Instead, each and every one of them had different shapes and appearances. Taking a closer look, between the worlds they were not independent. Instead, there seemed to be some kind of connection. They subconsciously followed that connection to see the entire 3 realms. The plane also became clearer and clearer. In the next moment, the entire divine realm also changed. Large patches of golden light shone out from the darkness. The originally scattered starlight began to gather. Thin golden lines began to connect the various small worlds, and all of them converged downwards. Only then did Lone Moon and I Ching open their eyes. They were directly shocked by the shining golden scene in front of them. This is the true appearance of this plane, Shening explained. The 2 of them were stunned. They exchanged a look, then looked at the scene in front of them again. It was a huge tree, a huge golden tree. The tree was shining with a dazzling golden light, extending endlessly in all directions, as if it covered the sky and covered the sun. Between the leaves were densely packed, and each leaf was a small world. This was their plane. As for how to find that small world just now, Shening turned and glanced at the 2 of them. She said coldly, "You don't need me to teach you anymore, do you?" She was indeed a qualified teacher? Just a little better than Big Sister. Why? Amazed face. Why, let me find it. Lone Moon was still in shock from the fact that the entire plane was in front of him. What's more, in that instant, countless rules surged into his mind. It was as if he had memorized an encyclopedia. He understood all the rules and laws of the plane instantly. Not only did he understand them completely, but he could even adjust them. Everything was under his control. This way, finding the small world where the immortal spring was just now would be a piece of cake. So he took a step forward and went under the tree. I Ching, on the other hand, turned and returned to Xin Ying's side. He took out a plate of pastries and handed it to her. "Master, you've been busy for so long. Do you want some pastries to fill your stomach? This is new too. I wonder if Master likes it." Pastries. Shen Ying's eyes lit up, but her expression did not change. She glanced at the pastries in his hand. After a while she said, "All right, I'll help you try it." She did not want to eat it at all. Carrot. I Ching's expression became even warmer. He smiled faintly. "Your disciple understands. Thank you, master." Only then did she take it. With a serious expression, she stuffed one piece after another into her mouth, like a happy little hamster. Found it. In less than the time it took to eat a piece of pastry, Lone Moon exclaimed in joy. In the next instant his voice deepened. How can this be? What small world was this? Chapter 416. That small world was at the bottom left of the plane tree. It was different from the other leaf-shaped worlds. This small world was actually a mushroom. Lone Moon paused. He looked closely for a while, and realized that there really was a mushroom growing on the tree branch. And it was bright in color. It was out of place with the golden tree. This was also a small world? Why did a mushroom grow on a perfectly fine tree? Lone Moon looked confused. He released his divine perception into that small world. Instantly, the thousands of living beings in that small world appeared in front of him. The spirit chi here was thick. It was no different from other small worlds. What's going on? Lone Moon turned to look at the two people behind him. Shenning quickly stuffed the last piece of pastry into her mouth. She stepped forward with a cold expression. She pulled out the light screen to check the data of this small world. After a while, she shook her head and said, "From the data, the interior of this small world is no different from other places. Could it be another special world created by the God Fiend?" Lone Moon frowned. A mushroom grew on a good tree. There must be something wrong with it, right? And the position of the mushroom was very remote. They would not notice it if they did not look closely. Shenning frowned. She was about to explain when I Ching seemed to think of something. He said in a low voice, "If there's no problem now, it means that there was only an anomaly when the immortal spring appeared." "What do you mean?" "Father Niu." I Ching stepped forward and said in a low voice, "Do you remember the anomaly when the immortal spring formed?" "Anomaly? Wasn't it just immortal chi going berserk and gathering into a spring?" He blurted out. "There are many cases of immortal chi gathering in the immortal world, right? It's not really an anomaly. It's like using a large-scale immortal gathering sorcery, advancing to heavenly tribulation or..." He suddenly stopped mid-sentence, and his eyes widened abruptly. "Or ascended from the lower realm." I Ching directly said his last guess. Lone Moon frowned. "You're saying that the immortal spring appeared because someone from the lower realm went through tribulation and ascended." He thought about the scene when the immortal spring appeared. Indeed, the scene of immortal chi gathering was exactly the same as when ascending from the lower realm. That's not right. He suddenly thought of something. If someone ascended, they should have formed an immortal ascension stage. Why did the immortal spring appear? And there was no guiding light to bring them up. Perhaps it failed. I Ching guessed. But why is it such a coincidence that it happens once every 100 years? Ascension wasn't like going to work, and he still had to clock in on time. I Ching frowned. This was also the reason why he could not figure it out. Perhaps this is what makes this small world different. Lone Moon's expression darkened. "It looks like we still have to go to that small world to take a look." "I'm not going." Shenning suddenly objected. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He glared at her and said, "If we want to find out more about this mushroom, we have to go in and take a look. If you don't want to go, I'll go with Chef. All right?" "No." Shenning suddenly stepped forward, blocking his way stubbornly. "You're not allowed to go." "Why?" Shenning stiffened. Her expression turned cold again. After a while she said, "As assistants, you haven't met the passing standards. You don't have the qualifications to handle the plane independently. Be obedient." So what they did before wasn't right. I Ching glanced at Shenning and thought of something. He stepped forward and asked, "Master, did you find something wrong?" She faltered for a moment. Her face was still cold, but her eyes darkened. "What did you find?" Lone Moon's heart also sank. "Nothing," Shenning replied. She glanced at the two of them, and then started talking incessantly. You don't have to ask. I'm not as brainless as you." You can't jump to conclusions without any basis. I won't say things like feeling that the other world is very abnormal, and it's best not to test it just in case. Everything has to be based on data. Guesses without any basis can't be taken as established facts. Instead of believing in something as illusory as a sixth sense, it's better to make more adjustments and preparations. So before you make sufficient preparations, you'd better stay put. I'm definitely not stopping you from going, because of this feeling. All this is because you raised a flag previously. Yes, that's it. Definitely. Oh, #. She rattled off a lot of things without panting. She even nodded her head firmly at the end with a determined look on her face. Lone Moon. I Ching. She was worried about their safety. Was that why she stopped them? Would she die if she spoke nicely? Who did she learn such an awkward personality from? The two of them looked at each other speechlessly. After a while they both sighed. On account of her young age. Then let's not go. I Ching nodded. I'll think of other ways. Lone Moon shook his head too. He had to trust Shen Ying's feelings. Had they believed her? Shen Ying's eyes lit up. She breathed a sigh of relief. Up to you. She snorted and turned her head. This is your own choice. It has nothing to do with me. Her expression. The two of them. Shen Ying said that the small mushroom world was abnormal. She suggested that they not go in directly, but they had to investigate why this small world looked different. What do you think we should do? Lone Moon looked at Chef. Although that mushroom doesn't seem to have any big problems, that small world has existed for a long time. I asked Yu Hong to find out. That immortal spring had appeared in ancient times. Now that the god fiend had fallen, he couldn't tell if it was a trap or not. Although we can't go in directly, it's not difficult to find out what's going on in this small world, I Ching said. You mean to send a clone down? Clone, puppet, spirit, anything works, I Ching said in a low voice. It's just a trace of divine perception. We can take it back at any time. Lone Moon nodded. That's true. In that case, I'll ask Boss Lon to make a Dharma artifact that can be attached to divine perception. It'll be safer that way. He frowned and glanced at the stove in front of him, which was filled with all kinds of ingredients. Speaking of which, the next time you talk to me, can you not choose the kitchen? And he was even cooking chili. He almost choked. No. I Ching rejected immediately. He said seriously, Master's body hasn't recovered yet. I have to make more food to help her recover as soon as possible. Lone Moon turned to look outside. A certain person was sitting at the dining table, holding a pair of chopsticks in both hands. His back was ramrod straight, and he looked serious as he waited for the meal to start. Are you sure you're not filling a bottomless pit? I Ching followed his gaze and looked over. As if recalling something, his eyes softened and his face blushed slightly. As long as Master liked it, he was willing to make as much as he wanted. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Hey, that's enough. Can you mind your image? He scanned Chef from head to toe. Can you stop being so lovey-dovey in front of me? Can you understand my feelings as a single dog? I don't want to be fed dog food anymore, okay? We've been together for so long. Do you have to be like this? I Ching was stunned. He dropped the green pepper in his hand. His eyes darkened and he said slowly, Master and I are not like what you think. Like what? Lone Moon was stunned. His eyes widened as he thought of something. You're not going to say that you weren't together in the past, are you? I Ching picked up the green pepper that had fallen. Chapter 417. Holy shit. Was he blind before? Wait. When we were in that plane, didn't you? Shen Ying admitted herself. That was just a temporary measure Master used to get Elder Shen to agree to let her come back here. That means. Lone Moon's eyes widened. You actually haven't gotten her yet? I Ching stiffened. He lowered his head and began to pick up the chilies in his hands one by one. He was almost turning them into chili paste. Air. No wonder he had never smelled dog food before. He turned to look at a certain someone who was almost burying his head in the chili, and patted him on the shoulder. Then you have to work hard. Try to win her heart before Shen Ying recovers. I Ching was stunned. He finally turned his head from the pile of chilies. He asked subconsciously why. Isn't that obvious? Lone Moon sighed and said earnestly, "After all, she's getting older. She's not that easy to trick. If he didn't get her while she was still young and ignorant, when would he get her? Let me tell you, it's better to get a girl sooner rather than later. What's more, her mental age is only 15. Who knows, you might even be her first love." Lone Moon advised as if he had been through it all. "Don't blame me for not reminding you. If you don't make a move now, she'll probably get cheated by another wild man." I Ching panicked and retorted subconsciously, "No. Master promised him that he would prioritize him. All right, even if there's no one else." He continued to persuade. "When she fully recovers, think about it. With Shen Ying's original personality, it's not that she doesn't like you. She probably can't be bothered to like you." That seemed to make some sense. "I got it. That's right." Lo Moon nodded. He finally found some familiarity with his father. Wait, he seemed to have tricked something. Chef just said that Shening pretended to be a couple with Chef because she wanted to come back. Then didn't he get beaten up for nothing? Flips table. Degree, Shun. Ing. Late at night. Invincible Heavenly Palace rear hall. Shening gulped down the fruit juice that Chef handed to her. Her eyes were wide open. After a while, she handed the empty cup over. "I've tried it, and it's not bad." She couldn't help but smack her lips and add, "If you have any new products that you want to try, take them out quickly. I won't be able to try them when I'm asleep. I really want to have another drink, but I can't say that." Winky face I Ching stared blankly at her sparkling eyes and laughed softly. His heart softened instantly. He turned and poured her another cup. "Then I'll have to trouble Master to help me try again?" "N." She nodded solemnly and gulped it down in a few gulps. She licked the corner of her mouth, and her eyes shone even brighter. I Ching did not pour any more. He took the empty cup from her hand and put it away. "You shouldn't drink too much of this sweet juice, or it will affect your sleep." As he spoke, he subconsciously tugged at his sleeve and habitually wiped the corner of her mouth that was still stained with the sweet juice. Shen Ying's body stiffened. She forgot to put down her already empty hand and kept it in a raised position. But her face quickly turned red as if it was burning. Her heart also started beating uncontrollably. Calm down, calm down. This was her boyfriend. This was normal. She wasn't shy at all. And definitely not. Omega asterisk. Speaking of which, he seemed to have stayed longer than usual today. Could it be? I Ching was thinking about what Father Nyo had said, that she would be abducted by a wild man. He did not notice her expression. His hand subconsciously rubbed his sleeve. He hesitated for a while before opening his mouth to confirm. "Master, do you still remember? Aren't you going back today?" Before he had the chance to ask, Shening spoke first. I Ching paused. Habitually, he dealt with Master's question first. He replied, "Is Master going to sleep now?" Sleep. He stayed because he wanted to sleep here." Shening, who had completely misunderstood, blushed even more. She was at a loss. What to do? He really said it. However, they were originally boyfriend and girlfriend, and they had even met each other's parents, so it was normal for them to live together. Maybe they slept together in the past. Moreover, she quite liked this person, who could cook delicious food, and treated her even better than her older sister. As a manager, she was not afraid at all. She just didn't know how. "Are you sure?" I Ching paused. "You're sure? Sure about what?" "All right." Shening, however, gritted her teeth and took a deep breath, as if she had made up her mind about something. She said in a tone that was trying to hide something, "That I've already forgotten, so you have to teach me." "What?" Before he could react, Shening suddenly leaned close to him. With lightning speed, she smacked him. Bam! She kissed him on the lips. All I Ching felt was a clap of thunder in his head. His vision went white for a moment, and he could vaguely hear some heavenly music ringing in his ears. "Mas!" Before he could finish speaking, Shening suddenly turned him around and pressed him down on the bed behind him. Following that, she climbed up on all fours and sat on top of him. She grabbed his collar and pulled it open, her eyes widening. It was exactly the same as when she saw food in the past. He looked delicious when he wasn't wearing any clothes. His chest felt cold, and I Ching finally reacted. His entire body was as red as a cooked shrimp. Even his chest, which had been pulled open, was dyed red. Master, you're sleeping. Shenning answered seriously, still with that cold little face, but there was a slight tremble in her hands. Fulfilling the duties of a girlfriend. Such strong muscles. They were named by him. He could touch them. The next moment, a pair of small, slightly cold hands caressed him. I Ching's entire body froze. His entire body followed her movements uncontrollably, igniting a strange flame that was even hotter than his true phoenix fire. It was as if it was going to burn him to ashes. Everything around him seemed to have disappeared, leaving only a blushing face in front of him that was pretending to be serious. It was incomparably clear. So clear that it made one want to devour it into their stomachs. I'll be gentler. Shenning kissed his lips again, feeling a little excited. Hearing his heartbeat, which was even louder than hers, she could not help but comfort him. Although I don't remember, Father Neo said you're my boyfriend. Don't be afraid, I'll treat you well. That was how it was portrayed on television. She should not have said the wrong lines. But Shen Ying's hands slid lower and lower, looking like they were about to reach an indescribable place. In the next moment, I Ching suddenly flipped over and pressed the person on top of him under him. He locked her messy hands, turned and buried his head in the silky hair on the side of her neck, and stopped moving. Shenning was stunned. She struggled, but to no avail. Instead, the other party's grip tightened. Could it be that she missed some steps and did it wrong? Just as she was about to speak, she heard a low murmur, with a hint of accusation. Master, don't bully me like this. I won't be able to hold it in. Chapter 418. Shenning was so suppressed that she could not move. All she could hear was the other party's heavy breathing. A moment later, she thought of a question and asked subconsciously, You are not willing? That's going to be hard to deal with. He tightened his grip on her hand, and a chuckle traveled into her ears. She could faintly feel his breathing quickening. His tone was low, as if he was suppressing something. No matter what Master does, I am willing. Even more so than what he wished for. Then what are you doing? She was stunned. She struggled to move her hand, but it was tightened again. Don't move. His voice was urgent. His whole body was frighteningly hot. Even though they were separated by a layer of clothes, Shenning felt that all the places that were pressed by him were burning hot. After a while, she heard his pleading voice. Master, just like this for a while, all right? Shen Ying's heart softened for no reason. She obediently stopped moving. She did not know how much time had passed. Only when the rapid breathing by her ears began to calm down did he speak again in a low voice, with a hint of grievance. Master, do you like me? Shenning was stunned. Before she could respond, he spoke first. I like Master. I have always liked you. In the past, Master said that you only like me a little, but you don't remember. Now that I am like this, does it means that I like you a little more? Shenning, who had received an unexpected confession, stiffened. Her already red face became even redder, and her heart beat faster. She panicked. What should she do? This was the first time she had received a confession. She did not know how to answer. After a while she squeezed out a voice. My sister said that as women, we must be brave to do and take responsibility. It is the same for matters of the heart. Besides, there is no one in this world who can force me, except for my sister. Since I have already admitted that you are my boyfriend, of course I like you. Don't worry. I will take responsibility for you. The person in front of her stiffened. In the next moment, his whole body trembled slightly, as if he had heard some great news. Even though his face could not be seen, his whole body was filled with joy. I Ching did not reply. He only called out to the person in his arms over and over again. With a thick nasal voice he said, Master, Master, Master. Each sound was heavier than the last. It was as if someone was knocking on his heart, causing his heart to tremble. Shenning suddenly felt even hungrier. She subconsciously asked, Can we continue? It was a little heavy. She preferred to be on top. The person in front of her was stunned. After a while she finally moved. In the next moment, something imprinted on her forehead. Not now. Ha! Shenning stared blankly. He had already taken off his pants, and he still wouldn't let him eat. I Ching then got up slightly and looked at the person below him. Her eyes were still watery, as if she was hiding something in the mist. Master is still young. His expression darkened, and he looked straight into her eyes, as if he only had eyes for the person in front of him. Although I'm very happy that you finally responded to me, but I can't take advantage of you like this. Just like Father Nyo said, she was only 15 years old now. Perhaps even she herself did not know if this feeling was real. He could not be so despicable. One day she would recover, and if that time, Master also admitted it, then he would never let go. I will wait for the day I recover. Huh. Shenning was stunned for a moment. Her mind was full of question marks. Didn't Big Sister say that once a man is in bed, he will become a beast, the kind that can't even stop? So she had to choose the best one to take the lead? Why was her boyfriend different? And what did she mean by recover? What did she mean by recover? Could it be? Her heart sank, and her gaze subconsciously looked down. Could it be that when she met the parents, Big Sister really broke a leg? Just not that kind of leg. That's why he was unwilling. So pitiful. She suddenly had the urge to pull open a certain person's pants to confirm. I Ching completely did not know that a certain person's thoughts had already drifted to the secondary plane. Trying hard to suppress the agitation in her heart, she was just about to sit up. A familiar voice suddenly sounded beside their ears. Cough. Well, Shin 15th Chef, come to the side hall after you're done. Lone Moon could not find Chef in the side hall. To avoid seeing any unsightly scenes, he decisively chose to send a voice transmission. The divine perception that was sent to the small mushroom world a few days ago has returned. Lone Moon waited in the room for a full 20 minutes before Shenning and Chef pushed the door open and entered. Why are you so slow? He looked up. It was only a turn from the back hall to the side hall. You guys. Chef, what happened to your clothes? He scanned Chef from head to toe. The person who was always neatly dressed in the past had a crooked collar and a tear on the side of his body. Yet he did not seem to notice. I Ching's body stiffened. He subconsciously wanted to look at the person beside him, but resisted the urge. He hurriedly replied, It's nothing. I accidentally cut myself while practicing swordplay. Practicing swordplay in the middle of the night? Lone Moon frowned. I Ching stiffened even more. He could only nod vigorously. Yes. Shenning, who was at the side, quietly sat down at the table. With a cold expression that never changed, she pretended not to know anything. Lone Moon did not ask in detail. He pointed to the chair beside him and said, All right, come in quickly. The matter with that mushroom has been investigated. Only then did the two see that there was a figure standing behind him. A figure that looked exactly like Lone Moon. Only his expression was a little dull. He stood there motionlessly. It was the clone that he sent into the small world a few days ago. Lone Moon raised his hand and conjured a seal at that clone. Instantly, a wisp of white chi flew out of his body and entered Lone Moon's palm. And the person who looked exactly like Father Nyo turned into an octagonal bronze mirror in a flash. Lone Moon waved his hand. The bronze mirror immediately emitted a white light. Like a projection, scenes of the lower realm appeared in front of the few of them. I used my divine perception to control this clone to fly all over that small world. Lone Moon explained. What is shown in this mirror is everything it saw in the lower realm. I Ching stepped forward and looked at the scenes carefully. There were mortal realms with thin spirit chi. There were also spirit mountains and blessed lands where cultivators gathered. There were even scenes of cultivators fighting in the lower realm. It could be said that the investigation was very thorough. There's nothing wrong with just looking at the scenes in this picture? I Ching frowned and turned back to look at Lone Moon. When I first looked at it, I also felt that there was nothing wrong. Lone Moon nodded. But after looking at it, I feel that something is missing. What's missing? I Ching hesitated. Just as he was about to ask, Shenning beside him spoke first. Missing the river of forgetfulness. Chapter 419. That's right, it's the river of forgetfulness. Lone Moon nodded hard and pointed at the images. This small world actually has no tributary of the river of forgetfulness at all, as if it's completely isolated. I Ching was shocked and opened the assistant's authority to look at the images carefully, but found that the images had not changed at all. Although the ground was lush, there was no aura of the river of forgetfulness below. Why is it like this? There were so many living people in this small world. Not only that, Lone Moon raised his hand and brushed the octagonal bronze mirror. The images in front of him enlarged instantly. The figures that were originally the size of ants appeared clearly in front of him, and their voices were heard. This was a mortal city market. Father Neo's clone seemed to be sitting in a restaurant. The waiter beside him was recommending good wine. "Sir, would you like a pot of our shop's origin green wine? Our shopkeeper personally brewed it. It's been sealed for more than 200 years. Or you can try the scorching red wine, 100-year-old wine, also brewed by our shopkeeper." With that said, he pointed to the bearded shopkeeper at the door. 200 years. I Ching was shocked. This person is a mortal. Lone Moon confirmed, a mortal without spirit chi or spirit roots. But a mortal's lifespan is not more than 100 years. How did he? He stopped mid-sentence, as if thinking of something. His eyes widened suddenly. Because of the river of forgetfulness. That's right. Lone Moon nodded. In this small world, be it mortals or cultivators, they all seem to be out of samsara. I Ching's expression darkened. Without the river of forgetfulness, ghosts could not enter samsara after death. Could this place be the same as Song Ren's world? No, it's not the same. Lone Moon shook his head. Song Ren's plane was repaired and caused chaos in the river of forgetfulness. But there is no river of forgetfulness flowing through this world, as if it was deliberately bypassed, completely isolated. Everyone in this world has no concept of death, and there are no newborns. So they don't die. Yes. Lone Moon conjured another seal, and brought up the scene of two cultivators fighting. Both of their cultivations were not low, both soul formation cultivations. Those attacks were clearly very fierce, some were even fatal, but both of them showed no signs of dying, no signs of their souls leaving their bodies. The more I Ching looked, the deeper his frown became. If this goes on, I'm afraid the people of this small world, they will all disappear. Lone Moon sighed and kept the copper mirror. Shorty had once said that every soul had a limited amount of time in the world. The longer it was, the more it would deplete the soul. The so-called cultivation technique was actually just to strengthen the soul body and allow it to stay longer. Only the river of forgetfulness could mend one's soul. So the first and final destination of all living beings in the world was the river of forgetfulness. In this mushroom world, everyone seemed to be immortal, but their souls were slowly being consumed. One day, they would completely disappear. Why is this small world the only one that is isolated? Shorty couldn't have forgotten. I Ching turned to look at Shining. "Master, what do you think?" Shining frowned. She raised her hand and tapped on her wristband. Instantly a screen appeared. In the next instant, the huge plane tree appeared in front of the two of them. She immediately located the mushroom world and zoomed in on the connection point. A huge patch of golden light lit up, so blinding that they could not open their eyes. Shining adjusted something at the last moment, and the golden light dimmed. It turned into thousands of silk threads, intertwining and extending in all directions. This is the river of forgetfulness. The golden river was filled with dense soul power. It should be the river of forgetfulness that gathered souls. Look over there. Shining pointed to the surroundings of the mushroom world. Indeed, there were originally many crisscrossing thin threads, but none of them were connected to that mushroom. It was as if they deliberately avoided it. What is Shorty doing? It really was because of the river of forgetfulness. Lone Moon was a little angry. Why did she leave out this world? It probably has nothing to do with her, I Ching said in a low voice. Although she is the river of forgetfulness itself, she does not completely understand everything about the small world. Moreover, there was no river of forgetfulness in this small world. Back then, these things were probably all watched by Godfiend. Otherwise, Godfiend would not have asked them to look for Meng Pa all over the world for what happened in the demon realm. We can't go on like this. We can't watch this world disappear completely. Although it will not affect other small worlds, Lone Moon said in a low voice. Who said it won't affect other small worlds? Shining glared at him coldly. What do you mean? Lone Moon was stunned. She then reminded him seriously. Did you forget that there's still that door? Realm door. I Ching was shocked. He immediately remembered. Indeed, although this world seemed to be isolated and had completely broken away from samsara, which meant that no souls would enter this world. But as long as the realm door could be open, people from other small worlds could completely break through the void and enter this world. Didn't you say that cultivators above the soul formation stage could open the mortal realm door? If they opened the realm door to this small world, Shining turned and glanced at the two of them. What will happen? The two of them were shocked. Above the soul formation stage was the realm of ascension. If they suddenly entered a world without death, then they will think that it is the immortal world, and they would not even think of leaving. Shining nodded. These two assistants had quick reactions. They deserved to be praised. What should we do next? Do you need me to remind your pig brains again? I Ching. Lone Moon. Shin Dis 15. When he wasn't dissing people, it was still possible to communicate. All right, I'll go to Qingyu's place at the back of the mountain and inform Shorty. Lone Moon took a deep breath and stood up. He did not want to argue with a 15-year-old brat. Tomorrow, I'll go to this small world and reconnect the river of forgetfulness. With that, he turned around and walked out of the door. The room instantly quieted down, leaving only the master and disciple. I Ching's heart trembled for no reason. The burning feeling that he had suppressed earlier was showing signs of recovering, and the side of his face began to redden again. He turned to look at Shening, who was still sitting at the table. Master, Shening didn't reply. She stared at the plain map on the screen deep in thought. Master, he could only call out again. We can go back now. He tried to steady his voice and said in a low voice, It's late. I'll send Master back to her room. Shen Ying's body stiffened. After a while, she stood up slowly and walked to I Ching's side. Oh! I Ching clenched his fists and took a deep breath. After hesitating for a while, he seemed to muster up all his courage and quickly reached out to grab her right hand. Then, he held it tightly and walked out the door. Let's go. Shining was stunned for a moment. Thinking of the unfinished exercise just now, she could not help but blush slightly. As she walked, she subconsciously looked down at a certain person's lower body. It can't be true, right? A while later, Chef. Why don't you take off your pants and let me take a look? What if it's already healed? I Ching's foot stumbled. He lost his balance and fell forward. Chapter 420. Father Nyo brought little Shorty to the mushroom world to mend the river of forgetfulness. He left for a few days. Shin Ying and I Ching were extremely leisurely, but Shin Ying could clearly feel that Chef was avoiding her. Although he looked as usual and did not miss any of the 5 meals a day, Shin Ying just could not see his face. Every day when she woke up, breakfast would already be on the table. When she went out to water the house, lunch would already be on the table. Dinner, supper, and afternoon tea would also be on time. However, Chef would never appear in front of her. Every day, he was either hiding in the kitchen or on the way to the kitchen. Shining seriously recalled her own words and actions, and was even more sure that her sister had done something inhumane to him. Otherwise, he would not be so abnormal. She must have accidentally poked his sore spot that day. Although she was already very tactful, but with the technology of this world, he should have long been cured. Could there be some special circumstances? She heard that men who suffered such injuries would usually have some psychological trauma or something. It was normal for him to not be able to accept it after being exposed for the first time. So he kept avoiding her. She turned to look at a certain figure who had been hiding in the kitchen for a few days. He picked up the last piece of cake on the table and stuffed it into his mouth, clapped his hands, then got up and walked towards the kitchen. Whether as master, girlfriend, or manager, she felt that she should take a look and figure out the truth. Chef. She stopped directly at the entrance of the kitchen and called out. The figure who was busy stiffened, his hands trembled, and he almost threw the spatula away. After a while he turned back stiffly. Master, have you finished eating the cake? Yes. And no. Shen Ying's eyes uncontrollably fixed on the cake on the stove. This plate also looked very fragrant. I'll send it over right now. With that said, he seemed to be hiding something. Hurriedly picked up the few plates of cake that had been prepared on the stove, and walked out quickly. As if he was escaping, his face flushed red. He directly put down the cake on the table in the courtyard, and conveniently took away the empty plate on the table. Shen Ying followed him all the way and glanced at the fragrant food on the table. Seeing that he was about to retreat back into the kitchen, she suddenly remembered something and grabbed him. Wait, don't go. Chef paused, his entire body stiffening even more. He subconsciously looked down at his hand that was being held, his heart beating like a drum. Master. Shen Ying, however, reached out and pulled him down onto the chair next to her. With both hands on the armrests, she pushed him down onto the chair and said seriously, as a professional manager, I think I should have a good chat with you. I Ching looked at the person who suddenly approached him. He felt as if there was an explosion in his mind. His whole body was like a cooked prawn. His eyes widened and even his voice trembled. What? Don't be afraid. I'm different from my sister. I'm very gentle. Shen Ying tried her best to calm her tone. You have to know that as long as you are mentally prepared for this kind of thing, nothing will happen. But you still have to face it. It's not good to hide your illness for fear of treatment. Why don't you take off your pants and let me see? At most, I'll be gentler. After all, she had studied treatment theory for a period of time. As she said that, she directly began to pull at his belt. Just one look. Master. I Ching finally reacted and grabbed her hand. You can't. It was still daytime. Shen Ying faltered. She glanced at his flushed face, and instantly understood something. Is it that I can't see? No, must her eye. What if Master keeps wanting to take off my pants? I have to wait. I understand. But she nodded and finally retracted her hand. I Ching felt empty in his heart for no reason. In the next moment he heard her say, Then I'll ask Father Neo to come and see, okay? You should be willing to let him see. Wait. What did this have to do with Father Neo? Could Master have misunderstood? He and Father Neo? I don't remember anything in the past. But your relationship with him seems to be better than mine. If you're only willing to let him see, I don't mind. Don't worry, I'll call him over now. I Ching's face turned green. He directly stood up from the chair and said resolutely, I don't have that kind of relationship with him. What relationship? Anyway, I only have Master in my heart. Although now is not the time. He grabbed Shen Ying's hand. As if he was being forced, he said loudly, word by word. But other than you, I will definitely not let anyone else take off my pants, including Father Neo. Shen Ying. Lone Moon, who just entered the door. Did he enter the wrong place? Winky face *****. What are you doing? Lone Moon could not help but ask. He looked at the two in front of him with black lines on his forehead. The two faltered and then turned back. Shen Ying hurriedly put away her caring big sister style, and instantly changed back to that cold look. Although in the eyes of others, there was no difference at all. You're back. She looked down at the time on her wristband. So fast. 128 hours, 45 minutes and 6 seconds. This kind of efficiency barely meets the passing standards of an assistant. Lone Moon walked straight over and sat down at the side before continuing. I just ran around that small world and rearranged the river of forgetfulness. What's more, I didn't have to do anything. Of course it's fast. Where's Shorty? I Ching looked towards the door. He did not see Meng Po return with him. Oh, she went back to the underworld. Lone Moon replied casually. After all, it's reconnecting to a new world. There are still some follow-up matters that need to be dealt with. I Ching nodded and did not ask further. I just came over to tell you. Don't worry. Everything is fine over there. This matter has been resolved. Save you trouble. Lone Moon looked at the two of them and said, These few days, there's a pile of things in the sect that have not been dealt with. You'd better not make trouble for me. I'll go do my work first. With that said, he did not intend to stay any longer. He directly stood up and walked out. Shining looked at the untouched pastry on the table and suddenly said, Father Niu, what now? Moon stopped in his tracks and turned back. Shining then picked up a pastry and pinched it in her hand. She turned to look at I Ching beside her. It seems like it's almost the end of the month. I Ching hesitated for a moment. A moment later, something flashed across his eyes. His eyes widened, and he turned to look at Moon, who was at the door. He said cooperatively, Master is right. Father Niu, it's time to give out next month's living expenses. The corner of Moon's mouth twitched. Only then did he take out a bag of immortal stones from the storage bag beside him. Got it. When have I not given you enough? With that said, he raised his hand and threw it out. Seeing that bag fly through the air, Shen Ying's expression darkened. As if she had confirmed something, she shouted, Chef! In the next moment, I Ching at the side had already rushed out with his sword in hand. The sharp tip of the sword went straight towards Moon. A binding array lit up at the same time. Sword chi instantly filled the entire rear hall. Moon was shocked. It was already too late for him to retreat. The sword in I Ching's hand was already coming towards him. He frantically tried to dodge, but he still could not. His entire chest was directly cut open by the sword. Instantly blood flowed out. If not for his immortal body, he would probably have been killed. Moon's expression was one of disbelief. He turned to look at the person who attacked. Holy shit! I Ching, what are you? Before he could finish speaking, more than 10 swords formed from god power fell from the sky. The swords pierced into his bones and directly pinned him to the ground like nails. He was trapped in the array and could not move. You called me by the wrong name. I Ching said word by word. Unless necessary, Father Niu never calls me by my Dao name. He indeed acted very well. But Father Niu never forgot to give out living expenses. He also never gave out money so easily. When did he not nag for an hour? Who are you? Shening also walked over and sized up the person on the ground. Or should I say, what are you? Chapter 421. Father Niu brought little Shorty to the mushroom world to mend the river of forgetfulness. He was gone for a few days. Shen Ying and I Ching, on the other hand, were extremely relaxed. But Shen Ying could clearly feel that Chef was avoiding her. Although he looked like he was doing as usual, and did not miss any of the 5 meals a day, Shen Ying just could not see his face. Every day when she woke up, breakfast would already be on the table. When she went out to water the house, lunch would already be on the table. Dinner, supper, and afternoon tea would also be on time. However, Chef would never appear in front of her. Every day, he was either hiding in the kitchen or on the way to the kitchen. Shen Ying seriously recalled her own words and actions, and was even more sure that her sister had done something inhumane to him. Otherwise, he would not be so abnormal. She must have accidentally poked his sore spot that day. Although she was already very tactful, but with the technology of this world, he should have long been cured. Could there be some special circumstances? She heard that men who had been hurt like this would usually have some psychological trauma or something. It was normal for him to not be able to accept it after being exposed for the first time. That was why he kept avoiding her. She turned and looked at a certain figure who had been hiding in the kitchen for a few days. He picked up the last piece of pastry on the table and stuffed it into his mouth. He clapped his hands and got up to walk towards the kitchen. Whether as master, girlfriend, or manager, she felt that she should take a look and figure out the truth. Chef! She stopped directly at the entrance of the kitchen and called out. The figure who was busy stiffened. His hands trembled, and he almost threw the spatula away. After a while he turned back stiffly. Master, have you finished eating the pastries? Yes. And no. Shen Ying's eyes uncontrollably fixed on the pastries on the stove. This plate looked very fragrant too. I'll send it over now. With that said, he seemed to be hiding something. He hurriedly picked up the plates of pastries that had been prepared on the stove and walked out quickly as if he was escaping. His face could not help but flush. He directly put the pastries on the table in the courtyard and took away the empty plate on the way. Shen Ying followed him and glanced at the fragrant food on the table. Seeing that he was about to retreat back into the kitchen, she suddenly remembered something and pulled him back. Wait, don't go. Chef paused, his entire body stiffening even more. He subconsciously looked down at his hand that was being held, his heart beating like a drum. Master. Shining, however, reached out and pulled him down onto the chair next to her. With both hands on the armrests, she pushed him down onto the chair and said seriously, "As a professional manager, I think I should have a good chat with you." I Ching looked at the person who suddenly approached him. He felt as if there was an explosion in his mind. His whole body was like a cooked prawn. His eyes widened and even his voice trembled. What? Don't be afraid. I'm different from my sister. I'm very gentle. Shenning tried her best to calm her tone. You have to know that as long as you are mentally prepared for this kind of thing, nothing will happen. But you still have to face it. It's not good to hide your illness for fear of treatment. Why don't you take off your pants and let me see? At most, I'll be gentler. After all, she had studied treatment theory for a period of time. As she spoke, she directly began to pull at his belt. Just one look. Master, I Ching finally reacted and grabbed her hand. You can't. It was still daytime. Shenning faltered. She glanced at his flushed face and instantly understood something. Is it that I can't see? No, Master. What if Master keeps wanting to take off my pants? I have to wait. I understand. But she nodded and finally retracted her hand. I Ching felt his heart empty for no reason. In the next moment he heard her say, "Then I'll ask Father Nyo to come and see, okay? You should be willing to let him see." Wait. What did this have to do with Father Nyo? Could Master have misunderstood? He and Father Nyo. I don't remember anything in the past. But your relationship with him seems to be better than mine. If you're only willing to let him see, I don't mind. Don't worry, I'll call him over right now. I Ching's face turned green. He directly stood up from the chair and said resolutely, I don't have that kind of relationship with him. What relationship? Anyway, I only have Master in my heart. Although now is not the time. He grabbed Xinying's hand. As if he was being forced, he said loudly, word by word, But other than you, I will definitely not let anyone else take off my pants, including Father Nyo. Shenning. Lone Moon, who just entered the door. Did he enter the wrong place? Winky face *****. What are you doing? Lone Moon could not help but ask. He looked at the two in front of him with a frown. The two faltered and then turned back. Shenning hurriedly put away her caring big sister style, and instantly changed back to that cold look. Although in the eyes of others, there was no difference at all. You're back. She looked down at the time on her wristband. So fast. 128 hours, 45 minutes and 6 seconds. This kind of efficiency barely meets the passing standards of an assistant. Lone Moon walked straight over and sat down at the side before continuing. I just ran around that small world and rearranged the river of forgetfulness. What's more, I didn't have to do anything. Of course it's fast. Where's Shorty? I Ching looked towards the door. He did not see Meng Po return with him. Oh, she went back to the underworld. Lone Moon replied casually. After all, it's reconnecting to a new world. There are still some follow-up matters that need to be dealt with. I Ching nodded and did not ask further. I just came over to tell you. Don't worry, everything is fine over there. This matter has been resolved. Save you trouble. Lone Moon looked at the two of them and said, These few days, there's a pile of things in the sect that have not been dealt with. You'd better not make trouble for me. I'll go do my work first. With that said, he did not intend to stay any longer. He directly stood up and walked out. Shenning looked at the untouched pastry on the table and suddenly said, Father Nyo. What now? Lone Moon stopped in his tracks and turned back. Shenning then picked up a piece of pastry and pinched it in her hand. She turned to look at I Ching beside her. It seems like it's almost the end of the month. I Ching hesitated for a moment. A moment later, something flashed across his eyes. His eyes widened, and he turned to look at Lone Moon, who was at the door. He said cooperatively, Master is right. Father Nyo, it's time to give out next month's living expenses. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Only then did he take out a bag of immortal stones from the storage bag beside him. I know. When have I not given you enough? With that said, he raised his hand and threw it out. Seeing that bag fly through the air, Shen Ying's expression darkened. She seemed to have confirmed something. She shouted, "Chef." In the next moment, I Ching had already rushed out with his sword in hand. The sharp tip of the sword went straight towards Lone Moon. A binding array lit up at the same time. Sword chi instantly filled the entire rear hall. Lone Moon was shocked. It was already too late for him to retreat. The sword in I Ching's hand was already coming towards him. He frantically tried to dodge, but he still could not. His entire chest was cut open by the sword. Instantly blood flowed out. If not for his immortal body, he would probably have been killed. Lone Moon's expression was one of disbelief. He turned to look at the person who attacked. Holy shit! I Ching, what are you? Before he could finish speaking, more than 10 swords formed from god power fell from the sky. The swords pierced into his bones and directly pinned him to the ground like nails. He was trapped in the array and could not move. You called me by the wrong name, I Ching said word by word. Unless necessary, Father Neo never calls me by my Dao name. He indeed acted very well. But Father Neo had never forgotten to give out living expenses. He had never given out money so easily. When had he not nagged for an hour? Who are you? Shenning also walked over and sized up the person on the ground. Or should I say, what are you? Chapter 422. They want to infect this world. Shen Ying's expression was solemn. Chef, seal this passageway. We can't let them come in. Yes, master. I Ching nodded and flew out. He conjured a seal with both hands, and a golden sealing array appeared in the air. It grew bigger and bigger, heading towards the realm gate in the sky. The realm gate that was opening suddenly stopped expanding, as if it had met with some obstruction. But the realm gate was too big. A single sealing array could not close it completely. I Ching had no choice but to conjure another seal and summon 3 similar arrays to surround the realm gate, trying to close it by force. Shenning brought up the light screen and began to operate. Countless numbers flashed across the light screen. The realm gate in the sky swayed and showed signs of closing. However, the center of the blue light suddenly surged, as if something was about to break through the gate. In less than a moment, an ice crystal as tall as a mountain penetrated through the gate. Even the array formation that sealed the gate shattered with a sound. I Ching subconsciously took a step back. The backlash from the array and the strange invisible energy inside the gate attacked him. But it was repelled by the defensive array around him. He was just about to conjure another seal. Chef. Shen Ying's voice suddenly came from the wristband. Set up the array on the ground 50 meters below you. That's the breakthrough point. I Ching did not hesitate. He flew down and finished conjuring a seal. In the next moment, a golden array appeared on the ground and spread in all directions. In a moment, it covered the entire area of the Sea of Flowers. Golden light shone brightly. The realm gate that had been torn open in the sky began to slowly close, but the ice crystals that were like mountains were breaking through at an even faster speed. In less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the realm gate had completely closed, and the chaos in the surroundings had also stopped. Only a towering iceberg was left in the middle. They still let them in. I Ching's heart sank. He turned his hand and was about to conjure a sword spell. But he suddenly heard a strange sound behind him. He turned back and his eyes widened. Master! He cried out. The space behind Shenning twisted. Suddenly, a blue realm gate as tall as a person split open. Then with a series of crisp sounds, countless ice crystals stabbed behind her. Shen Ying's protective barrier was activated immediately, blocking the ice spikes. I Ching flew over and hurriedly picked up the person on the ground and retreated. However, the ice crystals did not stop there. Instead, they continued to spread forward, and the entire ground seemed to be covered with layers of ice. As I Ching retreated, he conjured a seal. In a short while, the realm gate was sealed, and the ice crystals on the ground stopped moving. Before he could heave a sigh of relief, Shenning suddenly pointed in front of them and said, "You're right. Watch that side." I Ching was stunned. He looked down and saw that the ice crystal that had just appeared was actually extending all the way to the west, connecting to the huge ice mountain from before. His heart sank. These ice crystals were not meant to ambush his master, but to connect to the iceberg. When they looked carefully, they saw that the ice on the ground had formed a circle, and they had unknowingly retreated into the circle. In the next moment, a white light suddenly shone brightly. The layer of ice on the ground and the huge iceberg emitted a dazzling white light at the same time. It was so dazzling that they couldn't open their eyes. A storm once again blew up around them. Wind blades that were as sharp as knives swooshed towards the two of them. Other than that, there seemed to be something invisible attacking them. I Ching released his divine perception, but could not feel anything. Only the defensive array around them was getting weaker and weaker. Master, this is... Give me your hand. Shenning directly pulled his hand over and tapped on the wristband on his wrist. As she operated, she said, "They are not products of this plane, so you can't see them. Let me adjust it." Shen Ying's speed was extremely fast. In a short while there was a beep. I Ching only saw a small light screen appear on the upper right corner of his hand. It was like a small map, and there were densely packed red dots flashing on it surrounding them. He saw it. I Ching tightened his grip on the sword in his hand and activated all the god power in his body. Instantly, the hilt of the sword burned like fire. He waved his hand and the fire swept across, and a wall of fire pounced towards the red dots around them. Instantly, they heard a few ear-piercing screams. Those sounds sounded like ghosts and demons, and they could not tell what they were. I Ching carefully looked at the small map. Indeed, the little red dots that were surrounding them just now were reduced by half. The attacks around them also stopped. The red dots began to wander about tens of meters away from them, as if they did not dare to come any closer. I Ching changed his hand seal and summoned a rain of thousands of swords. He attacked the red dots in the direction of the red dots. Instantly, countless screams sounded again. The red dots on the small map dimmed one by one. Not a single one was left. But there would still be one or two red dots appearing on the edge of the small map. But before he could attack, they would disappear again. I Ching frowned. It seemed like the detection range of his wristband was limited. These invaders seemed to have noticed this as well, so they purposely kept a safe distance. He looked down at the person in front of him, who was still calculating something with a serious expression. He gritted his teeth. But he could not leave Master here alone and directly chase after them. He clenched his fists by his side. Shenning suddenly said, the values around us have changed." "What?" Before I Ching could react, he saw that the tall ice mountain in the distance seemed to come to life. It began to grow wildly. It turned into an arc and shrouded the sky, and the layers of ice around them also began to grow upward. "Not good. It wants to trap us inside." I Ching's heart sank. He hugged the person in front of him tightly and planned to fly out on his sword. The white light around them grew brighter. Suddenly, everything in front of them turned snow white. They could not see anything. Suddenly, a huge pressure covered the sky and covered the earth. I Ching felt his heart stop. His chi and blood surged. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His primordial spirit felt like it was being torn apart. Plain isolation. Shenning was shocked. Her eyes widened. She hurriedly supported the person beside her. "Chef." Anger surged in her heart. I Ching brought out a protective shield to surround the two of them. Only then did his expression soften. "Master." He pressed one hand on his chest. He barely managed to stand by leaning on the person beside him. That pressure just now was a little familiar. It was just like the one Shinjing gave off back in that plane. But Shinjing obviously held back then. Just now she did not. "We have been isolated from our original plane." Shen Ying's expression darkened. She looked around at the vast expanse of white around them. "The plane isolation has cut off all our connections with the plane. We are isolated in a temporary alternate space." Chapter 423. Chef was the plane's assistant. His powers would naturally be restricted. The attacks from the other planes would naturally be more intense. I Ching gripped his sword tightly and was just about to step forward when his body swayed. The pain in his chest intensified, and his blood flowed even more freely. Chef, Shining was shocked. Don't move. This space has sealed off your powers. The more you resist, the greater the backlash. As Shining instructed, she operated the light screen even faster. She was trying to find a way to break through, but the protective barrier above them made clanging sounds. It looked like it was about to be broken. With a cracking sound, a crack appeared on the protective barrier. The white light that had been isolated from the outside started to attack again. Master! I Ching panicked. He pulled the person in front of him into his arms. Just as the light was about to hit his body, suddenly, there was a loud explosion in the distance. It was as if something had exploded. The white light around them dimmed. The originally snow-white space was now broken. It was as if a skylight had been opened. I Ching's cultivation, which had been suppressed, flowed back into his body. Chef, get out. Shining reminded him. I Ching reacted too. He flew out through the hole on his sword. In the next instant, he was back at the boundary of the immortal and demonic realms. Sect Master Elder. Yu Hong's expression lit up as she welcomed them. There was a large group of people beside her. Upon closer inspection, they realized that they were the 10 celestial emperors and sky fiends. Even Little Black was there. Exalted Goddess, Celestial Emperor I Ching. What exactly happened here? Celestial Emperor Chen Ge, who was walking in front, asked anxiously. He pointed behind them. These glaciers are... The strange movement just now had been felt by all the continents. It was even more shocking than when the immortal and demonic realms had merged. What's more, it was from the Bo Sea. Their first reaction was naturally to find the exalted goddess. They did not expect to be trapped in that glacier. I Ching turned back to look. The ground below had completely turned into ice. There was a round ball in the middle of it. It was the place where they had been trapped. There was a hole in it. There were still traces of immortal attacks. It was obvious that Yu Hong and the others had broken it. Exalted Goddess, are you all right? The others looked at Shining. What exactly are these things? Shining paused. Who were these? It's an item from another world. I Ching took a step forward and explained simply. We can't let it continue spreading. Otherwise, both the immortal and demonic realms will be in danger. He explained and turned to look at Yu Hong and Little Black behind him. Look after Master. With that, he flew out once again. For a moment, the sky was filled with flames and a rain of swords, directly attacking the glacier below. Everyone looked at each other and realized the seriousness of the problem. One by one they flew out. Emperor I Ching, we're here to help you. The appearance of this layer of ice was very strange. In addition, they had sensed the realm gate earlier. After all, this was a matter that endangered the entire immortal realm and demon realm. They could not just stand by and watch. In the end, they were all celestial emperors. For a moment, the sky was filled with the light of spells. The layer of ice that was still spreading on the ground was stopped by this attack. Countless ice crystals rapidly reduced at a speed visible to the naked eye. The strange white light from before lit up again, and the surroundings were once again snow-white. Suddenly, there was a cry of pain in the air. Emperor Little Biao clutched his arm and fell. If not for Little Bird pulling him up in time, he would have fallen to the ground. But one of his arms was already bleeding profusely. There was a deep wound on his arm. The scary thing was that he did not even see the person who injured him. Everyone be careful. There may be invisible things around us that even divine perception cannot detect. I Ching reminded everyone, as he helped the people beside him block a few waves of attacks. Everyone's expressions changed. One by one, they set up a defensive array. Even so, many people were injured. For a moment, everyone had no choice but to stop and gather together to deal with the situation seriously. Even Little Black hurriedly activated his demonic chi and set up a grayish-black defensive array around him, protecting Shining and Yu Hong. He took the opportunity to hold Yu Hong's hand. Madam, be careful. With that said, he glanced at Shining and added weakly, Exalted Goddess, be careful too. Yu Hong frowned but did not shake his hand off. Shining, who was beside her, did not seem to hear anything. She continued to stare at the light screen in front of her, ignoring this bowl of dog food. But her frown deepened. Exalted Goddess, What exactly is that? Little Black could not help but ask. How can there be invisible things that even divine perception cannot detect? Could their true form be those ice cubes? Otherwise, why would they appear in one attack? Xunying's hand paused. True form. She suddenly thought of something. With a turn of her hand, data flashed across the light screen. Her eyes narrowed. Indeed, the true form of those things was not those ice cubes but light. She looked up at the people in the sky. She did not notice earlier, but now she saw that all the celestial emperors were more or less injured. Only the sky fiend of the demon race was unharmed, as if it had been deliberately avoided. Her eyes lit up, and she turned back to look at Little Black. Who's that little green? Who's little green? Little dog? Little grain? Or little something? Anyway, it's you. My name is Little Black. Piercing, exalted goddess nicknames. Each one was more unique than the other. Use demonic chi to cover this entire area. She pointed around and said, don't leave any sunlight. You should be able to do that, right? Little Black paused. Although he did not understand what she meant, he still nodded and said, I'll try my best. With that said, he looked at Yu Hong, tightened his grip on her hand, and then let go and flew out. In an instant, the demonic chi around his body increased, covering the entire sky like dark clouds. It was noon, but the sky suddenly darkened. A bone-chilling aura spread out. Demonic chi. The celestial emperors were stunned. Why did Demon King Little Black suddenly? Wait! Everyone look! Someone cried out in surprise. Everyone looked over, only to see that the originally empty surroundings, under the influence of the demonic chi, actually began to form faint circles of shadows. They still could not see their faces clearly, but they could already make out blurry human figures. The Sky Fiends immediately reacted. Quick, release the demonic chi. Force them to reveal themselves. The demonic chi on the 10 Sky Fiends also surged out. Previously, they were worried about the celestial emperors of the immortal world, afraid of accidentally injuring them, so they held back. Now that the demonic chi could force those invisible things out, they naturally did not hold back anymore. In an instant, the demonic chi flourished. In addition to the fact that this place was already close to the demonic world, in less than a moment, the surroundings darkened. The thick, almost black demonic chi filled the entire area, and the blurry figures in the sky also became clearer. Slowly they could see their silhouettes, figures, and faces. When they completely saw the figures around them, everyone froze, their eyes widened in disbelief, and they all exclaimed in unison. Lone Moon! Nit's Father Neo! So many Father Neo! Chapter 424. There were hundreds of figures surrounding them, but they all had the same face, a face that was exactly the same as Lone Moon's. How did Elder Lone Moon do this? Yu Hong was confused as well. Their expressions and appearances were exactly the same. There shouldn't be so many of them, right? They copied Father Neo's data. Xun Ying's expression darkened. As she scanned the figures in the sky, she said in a low voice, none of the people who appeared here are real. After the initial shock, the crowd reacted immediately. They attacked again. Now that they could see each other, they finally started to fight back. The sky was filled with the light of spells again. The hundreds of Father Neo also rushed forward and started fighting with the crowd. Soon, they realized that not only did these people look like Lone Moon, but even their cultivation levels were exactly the same as his. In other words, there were hundreds of young Emperor Sword cultivators in the sky. The crowd broke out in a cold sweat. Although they were all celestial emperors, they could not withstand the combined attacks of hundreds of young emperors. It was still quite difficult for one person to deal with tens of them, especially when they were sword cultivators. At first the crowd still had the advantage, but slowly they were losing. And the other party seemed to see this too. They attacked even more fiercely, even giving up on defense, and attacking with no regard for their lives. The crowd's hearts sank. In the next moment, they suddenly heard a dragon's roar. I Ching did not have the mood to continue wasting time. He changed back to his original form, a huge golden dragon, and rushed up into the sky. God power flowed around him, as he summoned a sky full of lightning. Like a huge net, he struck the sky full of people who looked exactly the same as him. Following the rumbling of thunder, those figures were like harvested wheat, falling to the ground in large swathes. Dragon race. The celestial emperors were stunned. They looked at the huge golden dragon that suddenly appeared in the sky in disbelief. They could not react for a long time. Don't be distracted. Fight. I Ching had to remind them. His thick god power swept over. The crowd was stunned. Then, they regained their composure and threw themselves back into the battle. They could not help but feel excited, as if they were on steroids. The celestial emperors especially attacked even more fiercely. On the other hand, the attacks of the celestial demons were much weaker. After so many years, the celestial race had appeared once again in the celestial realm. Although they were also very excited, there was nothing they could do. After all, the god race had always been their natural enemy. Just sensing the other party's divine power made their legs go soft. The situation in the sky changed in an instant. Those figures that looked exactly like Father Neo were continuously being struck down by the crowd. Like shattered ice crystals, they disappeared directly. In less than a moment, not many people could be seen. The battle lasted for several hours. Everyone, including the heavenly demon, was heavily injured. They didn't even have the strength to speak. Only when the last figure disappeared in the sky did everyone heave a sigh of relief. They turned and retreated in Shen Ying's direction. It's finally over. Yu Hong heaved a sigh of relief. She put away the defense array around her and was about to walk out. Wait! Shen Ying suddenly reached out and pulled her back, looking ahead. It's not over yet. The ice crystals did not disappear. What? Yu Hong was stunned, unable to react. The ice crystals suddenly emitted a dazzling white light again, directly dispersing half of the devil chi in the sky. An unfamiliar aura swept across the area. Figures began to form in the surroundings again. Everyone be careful! Yu Hong cried out, wanting to warn the people who were flying back. But those people seemed not to hear her. Instead, they flew even faster. With the white light behind them, they closed in on them. Their eyes, which were originally full of fighting spirit, were now cold. Yu Hong's heart sank. Suddenly, she felt that something was wrong. They were being controlled. She hurriedly called out the defense array. Pom! Before she could finish, the look in her eyes changed. It was as if the light in her eyes had disappeared. She turned and summoned her immortal sword. Expressionlessly, she slashed at Shen Ying. Master! I Ching called out anxiously, but it was already too late. In the next moment, everyone's attacks landed. A sky full of swords rained down on Shen Ying. The defense system on Shen Ying's body was activated instantly. A layer of transparent protective shield appeared around her, wrapping her up like a ball. All the attacks that landed on her were absorbed directly. Not a single one of them was missed. Everyone was hit and fell from the sky. Even Yu Hong, who was beside her, was sent flying. But in a short while those people got up again. Their eyes were just like those Father Neo from before. They were so calm that there was no emotion in them at all. It was as if they were puppets being controlled. Consciousness plunder. Shen Ying was stunned. Her expression darkened. Master! I Ching finally flew over and was just about to land. But Shen Ying was shocked. She shouted, "Don't come over." It was too late. Just as she finished speaking, something suddenly broke out of the ground where she was standing. It stabbed towards her like a thorn. I Ching wanted to dodge, but it was too late. The ice pillar pierced through his entire left shoulder, and he fell to the ground. Bright red blood flowed all over the ground. The surrounding ice crystals took the opportunity to expand crazily. They directly sealed Shen Ying in the ice crystals. Master! I Ching got up and attacked the ice mountain crazily, but it was completely ineffective. He could only watch as the ice pillar in front of him grew into a huge ice mountain in the blink of an eye. Shen Ying's figure also disappeared inside, and the pressure from before appeared again. I Ching felt the god power in his body empty. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Shen Ying was already completely sealed in the ice crystals. There was only white around her. Large patches of ice source appeared. The world in front of her had already become a completely white world. It formed a white space that was even bigger than before. It was completely separated from the previous world. No wonder when they were fighting with those Father Neo, the ice crystals did not expand at all. But they did not expect that they had already seeped into the ground. They had already wrapped up the land within a radius of 100 miles. Their goal was to trap her in the plane once again. The assistant's ability came from the manager. As long as she was not in the plane, it would not take much effort to suppress Chef. Manager. Indeed, a familiar voice sounded in the sky. A white figure suddenly walked out of the layers of ice. It was a face that was exactly the same as those people before. But there was an additional familiar aura about it. Xunying's eyes narrowed. She heaved a sigh of relief. Finally out. The real Father Nyo's body? She scanned the other party from head to toe. Subconsciously, she touched her wristband. Then she said coldly, "Intruder. I've finally caught you." The other party looked straight at Xunying. He broke into a somewhat strange smile. "As long as you disappear, we can completely replace this world." "Oh." Xunying still looked cold. Her expression did not change. She only tilted her head and asked, "Are you sure?" Chapter 425. The person opposite her chuckled. His eyes grew brighter as he looked at her, as if he had discovered some treasure. "The protection of this plane is indeed very strong. So much so that we prepared for so long, but were still suppressed when we really made the transition to this plane. It's already very impressive that this kind of new low-level plane can do this. If this was our first time crossing planes, you might really have escaped." In other words, this wasn't their first time invading a plane? Especially this assistant of yours, he's even more amazing. His abilities are actually not inferior to the managers of other planes. It took us a lot of effort to suppress his consciousness. It's a pity that he hasn't completely controlled his own power. So he's become our best material. Material? Oh yes, there's another one. He seemed to think of something, and his eyes grew brighter. He looks stronger than this. He'll definitely become a better material. As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding glaciers flashed, and the scene outside slowly appeared. She saw a man covered in blood, standing in the middle of the glaciers. His body was covered in countless wounds, and he held a long sword in one hand. He stood unsteadily, as if he would fall at any moment. But all around him, there were people surrounding him. There were people who looked like Father Neo, and there were also celestial emperors and skyfiends whose consciousnesses had been stolen. Yet he seemed to not see those people's attacks. He stubbornly raised his sword and attacked the layer of ice in front of him, as if he was trying his best to save her from the ice. What's more, his abilities seemed to have been sealed. There was no way he could cast spells to block those attacks. So the wounds on his body grew more and more serious. He almost looked like he was not human. "Chef." Xunying only took one look, and her expression darkened instantly. A sense of anger that she had never felt before exploded from the bottom of her heart. In an instant it burned away all her previous plans. Seek your rationality. Heh. She suddenly laughed and slowly raised her head to look at the familiar face in the sky. An aura that was even colder than the surrounding glaciers instantly exploded from her body. Even her voice carried a hint of danger. "You. Very good. Very good, to the point that she couldn't help but lose her temper. He'll become one of us soon." The person in the sky was still smiling. "Just like this plane." How did the energy in your body suddenly?" "Impossible, I clearly sealed it." The light screen around Xunying dimmed. Even the defense around her was retracted. The ice crystals around her could not get close to her at all. Something terrifying seemed to explode from her body. The ice crystals around her were like chopped chives breaking in half. She walked forward step by step, and with every step she took, a crack would appear beneath her feet. It was as if she could tear the world apart. "We've already detected that the manager's power has been depleted. Why do you still have such terrifying power?" The other party's face instantly paled. He looked at the person walking over in disbelief. In a panic, he summoned more ice crystals in an attempt to stop the approaching person. However, it was completely useless. He could only watch as more and more ice crystals turned into nothingness. Subconsciously he backed away. "I'm impossible. Don't come over." Shen Ying's face was cold and expressionless. She enunciated each word clearly. Don't you like to play with light? I'll play with you. Asterisk 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 outside the iceberg. I Ching could not hold on any longer. Even his consciousness was fading. He could not feel any pain in his body. His assistant's abilities were sealed, his god power was suppressed, and he was surrounded by enemies. It was impossible to hold on just by relying on sword techniques. But, Master was still sealed inside. The plain seal could restrict the manager's abilities. In addition, Master's body had not recovered. She was in great danger. Ignoring the attacks on his body, he no longer had the strength to stand. All he could do was struggle and crawl towards the iceberg in front of him. Master was still inside. He had to save her. He had to. All of a sudden, a deafening rumble sounded beside his ear, and even the spell techniques attacking him were halted. Tens of thousands of beams of red light instantly shot out from the seemingly indestructible ice mountain before him, sweeping across the entire ice source in the blink of an eye. Like the sharpest knife, they sliced through the ice source in all directions, as if they were tofu. The originally tall iceberg suddenly collapsed, turning into large patches of light spots. They disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. All that was left was a sky full of red light, and the figure that was slowly walking out of the red light. Master! I Ching was stunned. He looked at the familiar figure that was slowly walking towards him. Suddenly, he felt his eyes warm up. It was as if something wet had swept across the side of his face. It was indeed Master. She was fine, that was great. Shen Ying's expression was as cold as ice. It was as if all the ice that had disappeared had gathered on her face. Her whole body was emitting some kind of terrifying aura. She walked directly in the direction of Chef, and raised her hand to touch his forehead. I Ching only felt that the energy that had been suppressing him just now disappeared. The power that belonged to him flowed back. The wounds on his body began to heal quickly. In just a few breaths' time, he had recovered by more than half. Only the horrifying bloodstains remained on his body, reminding him of the serious injuries he had suffered. Just as his injuries were about to be completely healed, a familiar figure flew out of the sky full of red light. The other party also had a face similar to Father Nyo's, but he was covered in blood. He looked even worse than I Ching. His eyes were filled with fear. Looking at Shen Ying on the ground, his eyes narrowed. He waved towards the people who had just surrounded I Ching. Retreat! There was a distortion in the air. A blue light flashed. A realm gate immediately opened. Master! I Ching panicked. He was just about to remind her. But Shen Ying suddenly lifted his chin with one hand. She bent down and kissed his slightly open lips. She touched his head and said, "Wait for me. I'll go and clear the place first." I Ching's entire body stiffened. In the next moment, Shen Ying's figure appeared behind the person in the air. She turned around and pressed one hand on the position of the realm gate. As if she was swinging the door, she pulled hard. The realm gate, that had just opened a crack, closed again in an instant. As if she had used too much force, even the surroundings shook. She looked coldly at the real Father Nyo in front of her. She said word by word, "I'm sorry. Today, the immortal realm is closed." Father Nyo, I Ching, everyone. 3 hours later. In the rear hall of the invincible heavenly palace, Shen Ying sat upright in front of the table. Her movements were elegant but extremely fast. 3 meters away from the table, there were several rows of people sitting neatly. They had high cultivation levels and were dressed in luxurious clothes, buns, the kind that had their faces beaten swollen. The celestial emperors and sky fiends who had already regained consciousness curled themselves into a ball. They glanced at a certain person, who was still eating with all her might. They did not even dare to breathe loudly. For a moment, the entire courtyard was filled with the sound of someone eating. Chapter 426. Shen Ying ate very quickly. Perhaps because she had not eaten for 2 meals. In less than 20 minutes, all that was left of the table was soup. I Ching stepped forward and waved his hand, clearing the table full of plates. He calmly placed a new set of dishes on the table, and turned back to the kitchen to continue cooking. Perhaps because the other party was enjoying the food too much, Lone Moon, who had been sitting opposite her for a long time, could not help but reach out with his chopsticks to pick up a piece. He had just opened his mouth, but before he could put it into his mouth, he felt a tearing pain coming from the side of his face. He cried out for the umpteenth time, "Ow, ow, 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 ow!" Lone Moon threw down his chopsticks and covered his swollen face. He sucked in a breath of cold air and glared at the person in front of him resentfully. "You clearly know that this injury can't be healed using immortal spells. Can't you be gentler?" He wondered if his face would be disfigured. Shenning swallowed the food in her mouth and glanced at him coldly. She snorted and said, "If I didn't do that, the invaders would not have left your bodies. Based on your abilities, you would not be able to get your bodies back, even if you were given another 500 years. What's more, you weaklings who could not even withstand the erosion of consciousness. How dare you ask me to be gentler? Weak chicken Lone Moon. Weak chicken Celestial Emperor. Weak chicken Sky Fiend." She made so much sense that they were speechless. Exalted goddess. Seeing that Lone Moon's face was even more swollen, Little Black could not help but ask weakly, "Those things, what exactly were they? Why could they control our bodies so easily?" And that was not possession at all. It was more like their bodies were being squeezed by something else for no reason. It could even affect their primordial spirits. The longer that thing was in their bodies, the weaker their primordial spirits became. Although they were fine now, each of them could clearly feel that their cultivation levels had dropped. "With your intelligence, it's hard for me to explain it to you." Shenning finally looked up at the people sitting in rows. Her gaze was still cold. "So there's no need for you to know. Everyone." Blood was spilled. Lone Moon's swollen face squeezed out a reply. He glanced at Shenning and continued, "Then what do we do next? The invaders who broke into the immortal world have been dealt with, but the mushroom world still existed." Shenning stopped eating, and her expression darkened. A moment later, she seemed to have thought of something and said in a low voice, "They don't have the ability to invade again for the time being. Seal that small world and cut off all connections between it and other worlds." Lone Moon nodded. Although those people came from another plane, they had not been discovered for so many years. They must have completely controlled that small world. The only thing they could do now was to quickly seal it, so that it would not affect other small worlds. The others, on the other hand, were dumbfounded and only understood after a while. "Exalted goddess, do you mean that those things came from the lower realm?" "There's actually such a thing in the lower realms. Even we almost fell for their tricks. What about the other worlds?" Everyone's faces turned pale as they guessed the seriousness of this matter. "Exalted deity is right. This kind of world should be sealed," the crowd replied in a low voice. "If exalted deity doesn't mind, we are willing to do our best to help." "That's right. If we gather everyone's strength, we can give it a try and completely seal that world's gate. Make it impossible to open it again. We must not let those things cause trouble in the three realms again. We are already no match for them. If it were other mortal worlds, I'm afraid they would be in deep trouble. There's no time to lose. While our injuries are recovering, we have to act as soon as possible." The others also stood up one by one. Their expressions were solemn, but they looked like they had no second thoughts. If not for their bun-like faces, they might have been more convincing. Lone Moon swept a glance at the group of people in front of him. Their faces were all bruised and swollen. He was very surprised that these celestial emperors and sky fiends, who used to sweep the snow in front of them, could actually be so united. And they did not even take the initiative to ask for help under Xin Ying's request. Wait a minute. An unconscious thought flashed across his mind. He glanced at the steamer of buns again. Xin Ying said before that when she beat them up, she used some special techniques. That was why she could chase away the invaders who had taken over their consciousness. But they still took an hour to regain consciousness. It was Chef who dragged them back. But at the same time, their injuries could not be healed by sorcery. They could only slowly recover. They were so enthusiastic. Could it be that they did not want to go back to their own territory with such a face, so they stayed behind to help? They were afraid of losing face. That must be it. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Instantly, He felt a tearing pain on his face. He touched the side of his face. Suddenly, he understood what was going on with them. Why did Shenning only hit their faces? He turned to look at Shenning beside him. What do you think? Shen Ying's expression darkened. Something flashed across her eyes. After a while she nodded and said, Go. Thank you everyone. Lone Moon nodded at them. The Buns cupped their fists one by one. They planned to set off again to seal the seal. Wait. Lone Moon suddenly called out. He turned to look at Yu Hong. Perhaps because she was a body cultivator, her injuries were the lightest. Only a few bruises appeared on her face. At least it was not swollen like a bun. Yu Hong, bring everyone to Lan Hua to get some elixirs. The external injuries cannot be treated immediately. Let's treat the internal injuries first. Yes, Elder. Yu Hong then turned and let everyone out. The group did not stand on ceremony. After all, they had used up most of the elixirs they had on them in the battle just now. There were indeed not many left. So they all followed them. But they all silently set up an isolation array around themselves. Along the way, the cultivators who met them could not see their unique appearances. But their sorcery was only effective on people with lower cultivation levels than them. As for how Lan Hua would mock them when he saw them, Lone Moon did not know. He would probably laugh for a year. Only when everyone had left did Lone Moon turn to look at Shenning. Thinking of something, he said worriedly, Shenning, I feel that the invader controlling me is different from the others. Shenning turned to look at him. Lone Moon frowned. He did not know if it was an illusion. Logically speaking, he was different from the others. Ordinary invaders would not easily take over his consciousness. But there was something special about that person. I feel that his body has an energy similar to mine. It was very similar, but completely different. An assistant seal? Shenning suddenly spoke up. Lone Moon paused. That energy is an assistant seal. Your senses are right. He is indeed not an ordinary invader. Then he is an assistant from another plane. What? Why would an assistant from another plane do this? Plane invasions are not as simple as you think. Shenning looked like she was used to it. It is not only when ordinary people from another plane cross over. In other words, it was also possible that it was an invasion from the entire plane. Holy shit, this was practically the start of a war. Chapter 427. Then it's not enough to just seal the realm gate, right? Lone Moon asked. Even the plane assistants were here, and in pairs too. Who knew what other tricks they had up their sleeves? Shenning nodded. She glanced at the dishes on the table. Something flashed across her eyes. She put down her chopsticks and stood up. We have to completely separate that small world from the plane. And they can't do this. You have to do it. Me. Lone Moon was stunned. Chef just walked out of the kitchen. He turned to look at the half-eaten dishes on the table and frowned. What do we have to do exactly? Not here. Shenning continued. We have to go to the main control ground first. That small world can be easily separated from there. But you have to completely control the assistant's abilities. Main control? What was that? I Ching was stunned. He suddenly thought of something. Master means to go back to the divine realm. She nodded. Then what are we waiting for? Lone Moon directly turned and opened the space transportation. There's no time to lose. Let's hurry over. Just as he was about to go in, he realized that Shenning was standing on the spot. He was stunned. Shenning, let's go. Are you deaf? I've said it before. This matter, you guys can do it. What do you mean? Lone Moon was stunned. Shenning suddenly smiled at them. For a moment, it was as if all the frost on her face had melted. It warmed their hearts for no reason. All the best, boyfriend, Father Neo. After saying that, she fell to the ground without any warning. Master. Shenning. Their expressions changed. They both reached out to catch the person who collapsed. Their faces were filled with the same panic. What happened? Lone Moon carefully examined the person lying on the bed. He found that she was the same as before. There was nothing wrong with her body. She just fell into a deep sleep without warning. She was clearly fine just now. Master forcefully used her ability to save us. I Ching clenched his fists so tightly that fresh blood seeped through his fingers, but he did not notice it. I thought I could make it in time. That was why he had immediately returned to the rear hall to cook after it ended, but he did not expect it to be too late. Lone Moon thought of the unfinished food on the table outside, and his expression darkened. Shenning must have felt that no matter how much she ate, she would not be able to replenish the energy she expended a second time. That was why she chose to sleep. Shit. What else did she say? Lone Moon took a deep breath and continued asking. Based on Shen Ying's personality, she would not go into hibernation before the matter with the invaders was resolved. Master told us not to worry if she suddenly feels sleepy. I Ching tightened his grip and said in a low voice, "Don't try to wake her up. She'll wake up soon." When is very soon? I don't know. Lone Moon fell silent. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. Chef, the most important thing now is how to solve the problem of that mushroom. We have to hurry to the God domain. But Master, I know you want to use the same method as last time to wake her up. Lone Moon interrupted him directly. But there are priorities. We can't do it now. We have to quickly seal up that small world. You have to know that their target is Shenning. If we're late by one step then. He did not continue, but I Ching already understood. He turned back to look at Shenning, gritted his teeth and stood up. He took a deep breath and said in a low voice, I understand. Let's go to the God domain now. With that said, he conjured a seal and opened the entrance to the God domain again. Let's go, Father Niu. Lone Moon sighed and turned to walk towards the entrance of the God domain with Chef. Just as he took a step in, his sleeve suddenly tightened, as if something was gently tugging at it. He turned his head around reflexively, only to be met with a pair of round, grape-like eyes that seemed to contain a sky full of stars. The eyes were blinking as they looked at him. Her round face was tilted at him with some confusion, and her two plump lotus-like hands were tightly grabbing onto his sleeves. Instantly, Lone Moon felt as if an arrow was shot in his heart. Something was collapsing and softening. This child? Where did she come from? But the little girl behind him seemed to have confirmed something. She stretched out her arms and smiled brightly at him. In an instant, it was as if a sky full of flowers had fallen from the sky. Daddy! Dong dong dong. A row of arrows pierced into his heart, and something exploded with a bang. So cute. Master. I Ching was shocked and was about to go forward. Suddenly, a black shadow flew past him. A certain someone rushed over at lightning speed and picked up the adorable little bean on the bed. He rubbed his face with fatherly love and replied clearly, I'm Daddy. I'm your daddy. Biological daddy. Don't fight with me. Good daughter. I Ching. What was going on? Little Ing, whose face was pricked by a certain person's stubble, felt a little uncomfortable. She used her hands and feet to push the person in front of her away. She turned to look at the stunned I Ching and waved her little hand at him for help. She called out sweetly again, Mommy. I Ching. Lone Moon. Shenning shrank again, and it was the kind of shrinkage that caused a fracture. Then I Ching realized that Father Niu had gone crazy. In the past, whenever he looked at Shenning, he would find her an eyesore and would die if he didn't complain. Now he was simply a doting demon, like a nanny, lying on the ground with his butt up to coax someone. He didn't even care about proper business, and the kind that couldn't be chased away. Especially the tone of his voice, it was full of ups and downs. Littling, tell Daddy, how old are you? Little Bean, who was sitting on the bed, was stunned. She stretched out her two little paws and began to count seriously. She stretched out one finger on the left and one on the right. After a while, she slowly stretched out another finger, and in the end, she had 3 fingers. Then she looked left and right, then happily raised both hands and gestured 3. 3 years old. Littling is 3 years old. Lone Moon felt like his heart was shot by another arrow. He was about to become a hedgehog. So cute. He finally understood why Xinjing had become a sister complex. With such a cute sister, he also wanted to kill all the bastards who got close to her. Come, let Daddy hug you. He couldn't help but stretch out both hands. Just as he was about to hug her, there was nothing in front of him. The The cute thing sitting on the bed was instantly picked up by I Ching. I Ching turned back to glare at him. Get lost. Stay away from my master, you perverted little b*****. Xining, on the other hand, did not feel anything. Her little hands happily wrapped around the person in front of her and called out crisply, Mommy! I Ching's whole body stiffened. Master. His heart hurt, he wanted to cry. Chapter 428. Seeing that a certain hopeless daughter complex had completely deviated from the main topic, I Ching sighed and turned to sit in front of the chair in front of him. He placed the little person in his arms on his lap and asked in a low voice, Master, do you remember anything? Little Ing was stunned, as if she completely did not understand what he meant, her big round eyes blinking. I Ching looked at her attentively for a long time, but completely did not see any familiar information from that pair of eyes. Xining, on the other hand, felt a little wronged under his gaze. After a while, she directly handed over the immortal boat that Lone Moon had just given her to play with. It was clearly written in her eyes, If you like it, then let's play together. Forget it, forget it. Father Neo's heart instantly ached, and he interrupted Chef's question. Littling already said that she is only 3 years old. What can she know? With that said, he turned his hand and took out a Bell Dharma artifact, with a face full of seduction. Do you want to play with this? Come to Daddy. With that said, he could not help but reach out to hug her, but I Ching dodged to the side, his cold eyes instantly piercing over. Go away, don't even think about touching my master. Lone Moon missed and his face darkened. Why should he? That's my daughter too. The matter of that mushroom world cannot be delayed. Let's go to the divine realm first. To prevent him from continuing to snatch, I Ching changed the topic. Master can't leave people in her current state, I'll bring her along. With that said, he directly opened the teleportation door and walked in. Wait, I can carry her in too. Damn chef. If he had known earlier, he would not have spoken up for him, my daughter. In just a blink of an eye, the three of them had already arrived at that familiar place. Only that in the past, what they saw was a sky full of stars. Now what they saw was a golden tree that covered the sky and sun. I Ching looked at the plain tree in front of him, then at the person in his arms. For a moment he felt a little awkward. On the other side, Lone Moon had already conjured a thick carpet and laid it out in a familiar manner. He waved at Chef and said, Come, just put little Ing here in case she bumps into anything. I Ching then walked over and placed the 3-year-old Xining on the carpet. Master, we have to seal off that small world in time. Otherwise, I'm afraid those people will make a comeback. Please wait here for a while. Xining raised her little face and blinked her eyes, looking at him blankly. I told you she doesn't understand these things. He continued to smile seductively at Xining. He lowered his voice and said in an extremely shameless tone, Little Ing, be good. Daddy has something very important to do. Wait for Daddy here for a while, alright? Xining didn't know what to say. Instead, Lone Moon rolled his eyes at Xining. Little Ing understood this time and nodded hard. Alright, Little Ing will be good. As he spoke, he turned around and hugged the temporary little immortal boat in his arms. He sat down on the carpet and gave Lone Moon an I'm very obedient smile. Dong dong. Lone Moon felt as if another arrow had pierced his heart. He couldn't help but want to hug the cute thing in front of him. How about Daddy can hold you and cast a spell? Oh. Before he finished speaking, I Ching's mouth twitched. With a cold expression, he grabbed a certain seriously stupid person and turned to leave. Wait a minute, chef. Little Ing. Daddy will be back soon. Wait for me, wait for me. I Ching dragged him all the way to the plane tree. He only let go when he reached the bottom of the tree. He pointed to the red mushroom on the tree, that seemed to be even brighter than before. Proper business. Got it. Lone Moon rubbed his neck that was hurting from being pulled. After leaving the range of Little Ying's cuteness, he returned to his normal mode. However, he couldn't help but turn back to look at the figure behind him, who was focused on playing with the little immortal boat. From time to time, he would wave his hand and give a silly fatherly expression, not caring whether the other party responded or not. It's decided. After settling the matter of the small world, He would urge Lan Hua to refine 100 Dharma artifacts to make toys for Littling. How could his daughter Niu Huayan only have one toy? A while later, this mushroom is different from other small worlds. How can we completely seal it? Lonmoon asked in a low voice. Master said that we can do it with our power. I Ching also frowned and guessed. What he means is that we need to use the assistant seal. Then let's use the assistant seal and try casting the sealing array, Lonmoon suggested. I Ching nodded. The two of them activated the array at the same time. At the same time, they touched the assistant seal in their bodies. Instantly, they felt a huge surge of power surging out. They refined this power into an array, and then moved towards the position of the mushroom. In the next moment, two golden spots of light appeared on the left and right of the mushroom. They slowly formed the shape of Dharma talismans and began to expand. Countless Dharma talismans lit up in the surroundings. Finally, they formed two semicircles and moved towards the mushroom. They watched as the two semicircles were about to completely encircle the small world. Suddenly the Dharma seal shook. As if it couldn't hold on any longer, the originally golden array flickered. As if it couldn't hold on any longer. Finally, with a crack, it directly broke apart. The Dharma talismans also instantly dimmed. The two who were casting the spell took a step back. This won't do. Lonmoon pressed one hand to his chest, suppressing the roiling blood in his chest. He shook his head and said, "This is an entire small world. Even if the two of us join forces, it will be very difficult to completely encircle it." I Ching frowned. They wanted to be like the god fiend who sealed the outside world. They wanted to seal off this small world. They didn't think that it would be so difficult. Even if they used the assistant seal, they still couldn't completely cut off the connection between the small world and the plane. Chef, I feel that even if this method succeeds, it might not work. Lonmoon thought about it and said with some worry. Although we used this method to completely separate the outside world back then, it actually still belongs to this plane. But in essence, it still belongs to this plane. Otherwise, Shening, and we would not have been able to enter so easily. Let's think of another way. I Ching's frown deepened. He said in a low voice. But this is a small world that originated from the plane. Apart from the sealing array, what other method can we use to separate it from the plane? Lonmoon also fell silent. Although there were many spells in the world, apart from this array, there was indeed no more suitable one. How could they completely pluck this mushroom from the tree? Mommy! The two of them hadn't thought of a specific method when suddenly, a soft voice came from beside them. I Ching's sleeve suddenly sank. Suddenly someone gently tugged on it. Master! They didn't know when, but Littling suddenly walked over from the carpet. She was looking up at him with her grape-like eyes, looking a little aggrieved. I Ching felt his heart soften. He had an urge to hold the whole world in front of her. What's wrong? Chapter 429. Water, water, water. She raised her little hand and made a gesture of holding a water bottle. Littling wants to drink, wants water. I Ching was stunned for a moment before he realized that she was thirsty. He suddenly felt guilty that he forgot to prepare tea for Master. He was about to take off the storage bag when Lonmoon beside him went crazy again. Littling wants to drink water? Come to Daddy. I have spirit fruit juice, immortal fruit juice, sweet fruit juice, spirit purple juice. Which one do you want? As he spoke, he took out different colored bottles of fruit juice and placed them all on the ground. And all of them looked very familiar. I Ching's mouth twitched. How much food for Master did you hide behind my back? Shening scanned the ground and did not seem to find anything she liked. She had no intention of picking up any bottle at all. She was still holding on to Chef. Seeing him open the storage bag, she could not wait and reached out with her little hand to start digging. I Ching helped her take out a bottle of clear water and immortal dew and open the cap. She then held it with both hands and wanted to raise it to drink. But perhaps the bottle was too heavy and she was too small. She did not manage to lift it up. Instead, she lost her balance and fell backward. I Ching hurriedly supported her, one hand around her little body and the other helping her hold the bottle. She then gulped down a few mouthfuls and tugged at his sleeve after a while to indicate that it was enough. Only then did I Ching keep the bottle. He also kept the goods that Father Niu had taken out. Someone obviously did not notice, and only looked at Shunning like a human trafficker. She is indeed my daughter. She is so cute even when drinking water. Thank you, Mommy, thank you, Daddy. Shunning wiped her mouth and then ran back to play with the boat. I Ching. He already said it was not Mommy. Lone Moon subconsciously turned with her. Little Ing, Daddy will accompany. He had only taken 2 steps when I Ching, who was beside him, quickly pulled him back. Do something. Are you a pervert? I can't think of anything just by standing here. Lone Moon sighed. Even the isolation ceiling array did not work. He might as well go back to accompany his daughter. I Ching's expression became even more serious. Master once said that all spells are created by humans. As long as we understand the rules, perhaps. He paused, as if thinking of something, looked down at the storage bag in his hand, turned to Lone Moon and said, Father Niu, do you remember the method of making this storage bag? Isn't this a spatial compression technique? Use immortal chi or spirit chi to create a suitable space in the bag. What if this space is big enough to contain heaven and earth? That's not a storage bag, that's a mystic realm, Lone Moon said. Opening a mystic realm to create a world of its own. Even exalted immortals can do it. But at the end of the day, the so-called arcane realm is also a product attached to the plane. In fact, it is just a space of the plane. He pointed at the plane tree in front of him, at the tender shoots that had just sprouted. If the arcane realm has living beings, they will merge into the river of forgetfulness and slowly grow into a complete little world. It was like that in the 3 azure realms that they were in. He looked back at I Ching. You want to open a mystic realm and put that mushroom in it? No, that would be equivalent to putting it completely into the plane. No. I Ching shook his head, stepped forward and said in a deep voice, if creating a mystic realm is using a spell to open up a new space in the plane, then what if this spell is reversed? Lone Moon paused, his eyes widening. Holy shit. He was excited. Yes, opening a mystic realm was opening. If it was reversed, wouldn't it be kicking it out? You're awesome. He could not help but give Chef a thumbs up. He was indeed someone who could create his own sword technique. Hurry, let's try it together. I Ching nodded. The 2 of them took a deep breath, recalling the spell to open a mystic realm in their minds, mobilizing the god power in their bodies, at the same time striking out a series of reverse spells. In a short while, 2 especially strange and twisted dermic talismans appeared above the mushroom. Move the heart of the array to where it is connected to the plane tree. Lone Moon pointed at the root of the mushroom and reminded. I Ching immediately adjusted the spell, converging towards the lower part of the mushroom. In an instant, circles after circles of spells appeared. Like a spiral, they tightly wrapped around the place where the plane tree was connected, like a rope, going round and round. This reverse spell seemed to consume a lot of immortal power. Lone Moon held on for a while. In less than 7 minutes, he felt that the immortal power in his body was empty. It was difficult to hold on. He held on for a while. That feeling of immortal power, being sucked out continuously, still did not disappear. Even the assistant seal seemed to be unable to keep up with the speed of the spell formation. Suddenly, a white light shone around the mushroom, as if it was resisting them. In an instant, an impact was emitted from within. Lone Moon only felt a sweetness in his heart. The spell connection in his hands was broken with a bang. He suppressed the churning of his blood, turned to look worriedly at the person beside him, who was holding on by himself. Chef. But he saw that his expression was also very ugly. Large beads of sweat were already seeping out of his forehead. It looked like he was also holding on very hard. Lone Moon was a little anxious. It was obvious that their method was correct. Otherwise this mushroom would not be resisting so anxiously. It was just that his consciousness had been taken over previously, and he was beaten up by Shining. His injuries had not recovered in the first place, leaving less than half of his immortal power. That was why he was so easily repelled. Although Chef's injuries were already healed, it was indeed very difficult for him to use this spell alone. which he had never used before. Yet he could not stop. The other party had obviously sensed it. If he stopped, there might be some unforeseen changes. Lone Moon took a deep breath, adjusted his breathing for a while. Feeling that his body had recovered some immortal power, he hurriedly set up a spirit guiding array around Chef, hoping to reduce his consumption. But this reverse spell really consumed too much immortal power. I Ching's expression became more and more ugly. He even felt as if all the meridians in his body were being torn apart. His dantian was already empty. Chef, forget it. Lone Moon was anxious. He wanted him to stop. Let's think of another way. If this went on, he would also be injured. But I Ching did not stop. He focused all his attention on the spell in front of him. Just a little bit more. He could definitely do it. Master said that they had the ability to handle it. Then they definitely could. They just assistant seal. He suddenly remembered that before Master turned back to 3 years old, he seemed to have said that as long as they completely controlled the assistant's ability. What was the complete assistant's ability? They could clearly use the assistant seal freely. Wasn't that called completely controlling it? He subconsciously closed his eyes, sinking into his sea of consciousness. In front of him was completely white. Only 2 beads, one gold and one red, floated in the sky, like the sun and moon hanging high up in the sky. That was his dragon phoenix essence core. Other than that, there was nothing else. Chapter 430. I Ching's mind moved, trying to summon the assistant seal in his sea of consciousness, almost in a flash. A row of crooked black words appeared in the air. The 2 words letter of appointment hung high on the top. Even his primal core was instantly squeezed to the point of falling. I Ching gritted his teeth, mobilized his divine perception, and began to touch that row of black words. The familiar assistant energy emanated from the letter of appointment, instantly filling his whole body, making his almost exhausted meridians instantly soothe a lot. No different from before. No, there was still a difference. He looked carefully. He saw that in the last row of the letter of appointment, the punctuation at the end seemed to have faded a lot. The color was lighter than the other words. Could it be that the assistant energy he usually used was only this little? His heart sank, and he no longer had any scruples. His divine sense directly headed towards those characters in the air. For a moment, an astonishing amount of energy instantly burst out. The black characters in the air instantly seemed to be splashed with thick ink, and instantly dyed the entire sea of consciousness. The originally snow-white sea of consciousness instantly darkened. Only the 2 primordial cores below were still shining. At the same time, the huge energy washed his body. His whole body seemed to be about to explode. Chef, what's wrong with you? Shit, don't scare me. Looking at the person who suddenly began to vomit blood, Lone Moon got a fright. I already said stop. What's wrong with you? I Ching could not hear Father Nyo's voice at all. The entire sea of consciousness was about to explode from the rising energy. He took a deep breath, gritted his teeth and desperately mobilized the primordial core in the sea of consciousness. According to the usual cultivation method began to circulate. Master said that every plane was different. This was an immortal spirit plane. So the existence of all the planes appeared in the form of immortal spells. That assistant seal should be the same. The primordial core revolved faster and faster, as if directly driving all the aura around. In less than a moment, the originally still rising energy began to gather towards the middle of the primordial core. And the speed was getting faster and faster. The feeling of exploding in his body also slowed down. The 2 primordial cores each performed their duties, revolving in the same direction, one gathering the black gas formed by the assistant seal, the other gathering the white that originally existed in the sea of consciousness. A moment later, the assistant seal on the letter of appointment was gone. What was left were 2 inner dawn that were spinning non-stop, as well as a black and white Tai Chi pattern that was clearly visible and separated from each other. At the same time, he felt that his originally exhausted meridians were instantly restored to their original state. His whole body had never felt so relaxed. In a flash, it was as if everything in the world was in front of him. His empty sea of consciousness also changed. A golden plane tree, that was exactly the same as the divine territory appeared in the middle. Only then did he open his eyes. Chef. Lo Moon paused. He looked at the person who looked like he was in pain a moment ago, but now seemed to have recovered completely. Somehow, he felt that he was different from before. The aura on his body carried an indescribable pressure, causing him to subconsciously take a step back. I Ching was also a little confused. So this was the real assistant. He turned to look at the person behind him. Father Niu. Ah. Before Lo Moon could react, I Ching suddenly raised his hand and pointed at his forehead. An unfamiliar energy entered his body, and he felt his whole body lighten. The injuries caused by shunning healed in an instant. His damaged divine perception was also healed, and even his depleted immortal force was replenished. Holy shit! You're a god now, aren't you? Lo Moon looked at his own hands in disbelief. He subconsciously touched his face. Even the bun on his face was gone. He became the nation's handsome father again. He wanted to go and show his daughter his original appearance. He subconsciously wanted to turn around, but was pulled back by I Ching, who saw through him. Come back. The corner of I Ching's mouth twitched. Look inside the sea of consciousness, and completely refine the assistant seal. That is the true power of an assistant. Refine. Lo Moon was shocked. That thing needed to be refined. He had never thought of it that way. He looked at him in surprise. Thinking of the terrifying ability that he suddenly had, he immediately understood. He immediately closed his eyes and entered the sea of consciousness. With Chef's prior reminder, Father Niu's actions were even faster. In less than 2 minutes, he opened his eyes. The aura on his body also changed instantly. It was exactly the same as Chef's. Wow, this is a little too awesome, isn't it? Lo Moon looked down at himself in disbelief. So a plain assistant was actually this awesome? He suddenly thought of Shun Ying tearing the realm gate with her bare hands, and splitting the sea with one sword. Her special skills that scared people to death. He suddenly felt that the current him could do it too. His eyes darkened. He turned to look at the small world in front of him, that was still bound by the spell. His eyes turned cold. He turned to look at Chef beside him and said in a low voice, "Kill that little mushroom." With that said, the two of them reached out at the same time. They grabbed at the void and swung their hands. The mushroom that couldn't be plucked off previously was plucked out like a radish, and flew out of the plane tree. Seeing that it was flying further and further away, I Ching suddenly conjured a seal. Instantly, blue light flashed around the floating mushroom. 4 transparent blue lights connected to form a box shape, locking the entire small world inside. The mushroom stopped 3 to 4 meters away from the plane. What are you doing? Lo Moon didn't quite understand. Why don't you just let it float into the chaos and disappear? Anyway, it was expelled from their plane. Master only asked us to seal it out of the plane. She didn't ask us to destroy this small world directly. I Ching said in a low voice. I think she must have other intentions. Lo Moon nodded. He glanced at the floating mushroom again. Forget it. Anyway, those invaders couldn't invade other small worlds for the time being. The matter was finally resolved. He could also heave a sigh of relief. What was more important now was Little Ying. He suddenly turned around. His originally serious face changed instantly. A smile like that of a nanny father hung on his face. Daddy is back. Get lost. Little bitch. Don't even think about touching my master. Everyone in Invincible Sect deeply felt that Elder Lo Moon was sick. In one night, he seemed to have contracted a "I'll die if I don't show off my daughter" disease. And it was the kind that couldn't be cured. Ever since he came back from the immortal demon border, he brought back a little girl from somewhere. He swore that she was his daughter. Since then his temperament changed greatly. He no longer urged the disciples to cultivate, earn money and work. Every day, he would carry the child and wander around the sect. Whenever he met someone he would show off. Little Hong, come take a look. This is my little Ying. How is she? Super cute, right? My daughter. Little Bai, this is my little Ying. She's the most adorable in the universe. My daughter. Is she cute? Little Black, come let me take a look. My little Ying, you can only take a look. My daughter is cute, right? You and little Hong have to work hard. Ha ha ha. Hey, who's that? Let me introduce you. This is little Ing. How is she cute? My daughter. In one day, almost every disciple was stopped by him at least once. Yet before everyone could see the child in his arms clearly, he turned and walked away like a baby. It was as if he would lose a piece of his flesh if he let others take another look. The entire Invincible sect was dumbfounded, not to mention the fact that they did not even see what the child looked like. Elder Lone Moon was still single. He did not even have a female cultivator close to him. The only one he had, Yu Hong, was married to Little Black. Where did he get such a daughter? Then the question was, who was the child's mother? Chapter 431. The people of Invincible sect were full of questions, until Elder I Ching rushed over angrily with his sword, stopping a certain person who was addicted to showing off his daughter, and wanted to show off his daughter to the Invincible Heavenly Palace, to the 10 Directions continent. Where do you want to take her? I Ching was obviously very angry, and before the other party could react, he had already snatched the little girl from Lone Moon's hands. He even gave the other party a kick. Hey, chef, you're too much. Lone Moon was also angry and glared at the other party. I just brought her out for some fresh air. Do you have to be like this? With that said, he made a move to snatch her back. Oomph. In the next moment, I Ching's sword did not hesitate to press against the other party's neck. Of course, this meant that he was going to fight. The hearts of all the disciples could not help but sink. Seeing that an internal fight was about to break out, they were about to step forward to stop it or something. But suddenly, they heard the little girl in I Ching's arms, who had been quiet all this time, let out a soft and cute voice, as if it was mixed with honey. Mommy! Everyone! What? In the next moment, 2 lotus root-like little hands reached out from the wide cloak and wrapped around I Ching's neck. Little Ing is hungry, eat! In an instant, the originally tense atmosphere froze, and I Ching directly put away the sword in his hand, turned around, and flew in the direction of the back hall with the person in his arms. Wait! Let me feed! Lone Moon also hurried to follow, and in a short while, the 2 disappeared one after the other, as if the tit-for-tat just now had never happened. Leaving behind a dumbfounded crowd. Did they hear wrongly just now? That child called Elder I Ching, Lone Moon and I Ching. All the disciples' faces twitched, as if they had been struck by lightning. Didn't Elder I Ching never leave Sect Master half a step? Even if he had any intentions, it should be towards Sect Master. Who would have thought that it was originally Elder Lone Moon? And without saying a word, he had a daughter. Could it be that Sect Master suddenly went into seclusion to avoid suspicion? All the disciples of the sect were stunned. They suddenly felt that they had discovered something incredible. Lone Moon felt that the way the disciples looked at him recently was strange, especially when he appeared with Chef. Everyone had a look of excitement and speechlessness on their faces. Lone Moon couldn't help but wonder if this month's salary was given to the wrong person. From time to time, there would even be disciples who would purposely come to the back of the hall and look at him with a strange expression. Those strange gazes always made him feel like something was wrong. Yu Hong, I heard that Siyu is good at sewing. Suppressing the awkward feeling in his heart, Lone Moon asked seriously, why don't you ask her to help me make a few dolls or something like that? Little Ing was a girl after all. With Dharma artifacts, she would still want a few more plush toys. Yu Hong paused and subconsciously glanced at Elder I Ching, whose back was facing her as he fed. But Siyu is still teaching in the lower realm. Then call her back. Nothing was more important than his daughter. Yu Hong was even more shocked. What happened to the beautiful dream of swordsmen running around everywhere? Did he have to change so quickly? But seeing his determined expression, he could only nod. Yes, Elder. The power of love was indeed strong. So you are this kind of person. Suddenly, he felt a little sympathy for the sect leader. How much willpower did you have to endure eating dog food for so many years? Sect leader indeed. Yu Hong was just about to contact Siyu when she suddenly thought of something. She took out a large handful of dandelions from her storage bag and handed them over. Radish asked me to bring these over. Lone Moon frowned. Didn't I say that Shen Ing is in seclusion? Why did it send these over? No, Yu Hong hurriedly explained. It said that these are for you. Me. Lomun's eyes widened. Did Radish grow worms recently? In the past, apart from Shining, no matter how others tried to persuade him, he would not even bother to open a single dandelion. Now, he actually took the initiative to send it over. Yes, yes, yes. Yu Hong nodded vigorously. It said that I gave it to you when I got married, so you have to make up for it too. Ah, Lomun hesitated. What does that mean? What did this have to do with Little Black and Little Red? Anyway, Yu Hong blushed as if thinking of something. She directly stuffed the dandelion in her hand into Lomun's hands. Hurry and give it to Elder Chef. He will definitely like it. Chef, was this dandelion for Chef or for him? Then Disciple will go and look for see you first. Yu Hong had no intention of explaining at all. She glanced at a certain person in the house once more, then turned and ran. Wait! Before he could ask clearly, Yu Hong ran all the way to the gate of the yard. She even turned back to give him a cheering gesture. In a short while, she disappeared without a trace. Lone Moon. What the hell? At _ winky-faced Lone Moon looked at the dandelion in his hand, then returned to the house in confusion. He turned and handed the dandelion to Chef. Here. Why are you giving this to me? I Ching leaned back in disgust. He had no intention of taking it at all. Didn't you ask Radish for it? Lone Moon was stunned. Yu Hong said that Radish asked her to send it over. She asked me to give it to you. What do I need this for? It can't be used for cooking. That's strange. He frowned. Radish, that idiot, suddenly changed his ways. Didn't he always refuse to blossom for anyone other than Shining? Chef's expression darkened. He looked down at little Ing, who was obediently opening her little mouth and waiting to be fed. Father Niu, did everyone discover something? Shen Ying's shrinking this time was different from the last time. Apart from being a little shorter, there was basically no big change. In addition, her presence was low, so no one noticed anything. But this time it was too obvious. Anyone who was not blind could see it. The matter of the mushroom world had just been resolved. In order to prevent any unforeseen events, they said that Shen Ying was in seclusion. I don't think so. Given the personality of the group of brainless fans in the sect, if they found out something happened to Shen Ying, it would be terrible. Lone Moon put the dandelion into his storage bag and turned to look at little Ing, who was puffing her cheeks and eating at the side. His gaze softened. All his doubts were thrown out of his mind. He reached out to touch her little face, but was slapped away by Chef. Master is eating. Little bitch, don't even think of touching my master. Lone Moon glared at him unhappily. He could only settle for the next best thing. He moved a chair to sit beside little Ing and watched her eat. Until she finished the last mouthful of rice in her bowl, he asked, Good daughter, are you full? Little Ying's big round eyes turned and finally fixed on him. Her cheeks puffed up quickly, and she swallowed the rice in her mouth. Only then did she reveal a sweet smile at him. She nodded and answered, I'm full. As she spoke, she even patted her little belly. Little Ing is so good. She's not picky anymore. So cute. Not at all like a certain deceitful person who didn't like spicy food and didn't eat coriander. Then Daddy will take you out to play. Digest your food, okay? With that said, he subconsciously reached out to snatch her away, but was slapped away by Chef again. She should take an afternoon nap. If I let you abduct Master out again, his name isn't I Ching. Lone Moon looked at little Ing. Little Ing seemed to be really sleepy. Her eyes started to blur, and her little head was even nodding. Then I'll carry her back. He was about to say carry her back to sleep, but I Ching got up first and carried her. Little Ing rubbed her eyes and directly put her little head on his shoulder. She fell asleep instantly. Hey, Chef, you're too much. Lone Moon instantly said unhappily. You're not married yet. Your daughter is still mine. With that said, he took a step forward and was about to snatch her over when he suddenly heard a sleep-talking voice. It seemed to be filled with infinite grievance. There was even a faint sobbing tone. Both of them froze at the same time. Their hearts ached for no reason. Big sister, Lone Moon, I Ching. Chapter 432. Little Ing cried for the whole night. She was not the kind of wailing that ordinary children would have. She was so soft that she did not even make a sound. Only a few drops of tears fell from her eyes from time to time, soaking the little pillow on the bed. She was completely unconscious of her sadness. Every once in a while, she would mutter an infinitely aggrieved sister, which made one's heart break and sad. "Why don't we open the passage and let Elder Shin come over?" I Ching suggested in a low voice. Perhaps it was because little Ing had been too obedient these few days. Coupled with her previous impression, I Ching and Lone Moon almost forgot. She was only 3 years old now. This was the time when she needed the company of her family the most. No matter how good and meticulous they were to her, they could not compare to the weight of Shen Jing in her heart. Lone Moon also frowned, but Shen Ing said before that she sealed the plain passage to prevent Shen Jing from chasing after us in anger. You also know her sister's temper. How can we stop her? By then, not only us, I'm afraid the whole plane will. Even if it's just to contact her, let Master take a look. I Ching looked back at the house and could not help but continue. Master is too pitiful. To the current Shen Ing, although she treated them as her parents, the time they spent together was too short. At most, she only treated them as people slightly better than strangers. That was why she cried secretly when she was asleep. After all, she still did not trust them enough. Lone Moon's eyes dimmed. His daughter was crying like that. His heart also ached, the kind of pain that broke his heart. But it's not like you don't know. When Shen Ing returned to 15 years old, to prevent us from contacting Shen Jing again, she had already strengthened the plain passage again. He scratched his head somewhat irritably. Even if we wanted to contact Big Boss Shen, we can't. They would not be able to break the seal that Shen Ing had personally set, unless Shen Ing removed the seal. However, she had returned to being 3 years old. Instead of thinking about this, why not have a good chat with little Ing? Lone Moon thought of something and looked into the house with some worry. I think little Ing is not simply homesickness. Maybe there are other reasons. Otherwise, she would not be fine during the day, only to miss her sister when she fell asleep. It didn't seem like he was simply homesick. It was more like he had hidden it for a long time. So he subconsciously shouted it in his sleep. I Ching frowned. Naturally, he could tell that as well. Little Ing had a little secret in her heart. After all, she was only 3 years old. No matter how smart she was, she could easily see through it. For so many days, she had never mentioned Shen Jing. It was as if she was intentionally avoiding her. This might be a knot in Master's heart, but I'm afraid that even if I ask, she might not tell me. That depends on how you ask. He was experienced in coaxing children. Lone Moon thought about it and directly conjured a seal. His figure changed, and in a short while he became half a length shorter. Even his appearance changed completely. In an instant, she transformed into Shen Jing's appearance. Didn't she miss Big Sister? I've become like this, can't you just coax me a little? Why did he suddenly feel that his eyes were burning? You're lying. Pooey. I'm doing this so that little Ing won't be sad anymore. How can it be called lying? At most it's called cosplay. You don't understand. Lone Moon directly looked at Shen Jing's face and glared at him. He even flipped his long hair in a serious manner and gave him a look that said, "Be smart and don't wear your clothes later." He kept feeling that ever since Master returned to 3 years old, a certain person kept breaking the limits and becoming crazier and crazier. Little Ing is awake, feeling the movement in the house. Lone Moon immediately pushed Chef and gave him a look. He imitated Shen Jing and stood up straight, putting on a cold face. Indeed, in a short while a little figure swayed out of the house. She seemed to be still not awake. As she rubbed her eyes, she walked in the direction of the two. Mama. She took small steps and swayed to Chef's side. She raised her little hand and made a hugging gesture. I Ching hurriedly carried her up. She tilted her head and obediently rested her little head on his shoulder. Her eyes narrowed, as if she only just saw Shen Jing at the side. She was instantly stunned and her eyes widened. Lone Moon subconsciously wanted to give her a smile, but he forced himself not to. He even specially used his immortal chi to change his voice, and used the same cold tone as Shen Jing's to call out, "Little Ing." Little Ying's drowsiness seemed to wake up instantly. She looked up and sat up straight, looking at him with wide eyes in surprise. It was indeed effective. Lone Moon was secretly delighted. He continued, "Littling, now you." "Papa." Before he could finish, Shenning blurted out, exposing his disguise in a second. "Ha!" Little Ying's eyes lit up like little stars. She looked him up and down curiously. Suddenly thinking of something, she gave him a warm smile and said with a look of certainty, "Papa is so beautiful today, prettier than the other aunties." With that said, she even clapped her little hands in a very supportive manner, looking genuinely happy for him. Should he be happy that his daughter was giving him face? But why did he feel like he was stabbed again? Pfft, don't laugh. He turned and glared at Chef, who looked like he was having a hard time holding back his laughter. What exactly went wrong? Wasn't she only 3 years old? How could she tell at one glance that he was fake? "Father Neo, you'd better. Shut up." Did he have to laugh so hard that he was shaking? "Believe it or not, I'll beat you up. I'll really beat you up." I Ching took a deep breath and turned to not look at Lone Moon's face that was starting to turn green. Only then did he put Shenning on the chair beside him. Thinking of proper business, he squatted down and looked at the extremely obedient little person in front of him. His heart ached as he rubbed her red and swollen eyes. He asked seriously, "Master, did you have a nightmare just now? Did you dream of something scary?" Littling tilted her head, as if she did not understand what he meant. After a while, she patted her little chest and said, "Littling is very brave, not afraid." I Ching smiled. "Then does Littling miss Big Sister?" She paused, and suddenly a hint of fear appeared in her eyes. Her head lowered, as if he had poked something, and even her whole little body tensed up. She did not reply for a long time. I Ching felt a little flustered for no reason. "Littling, if you miss her, why don't you go back?" "No." Before he finished, she suddenly looked up anxiously, as if using all the strength in her body to shout, "Not at all." With that said, she suddenly pushed Chef in front of her away and jumped down from the chair. She turned and ran quickly into the house, disappearing in a moment. I Ching was shocked. He turned back with some confusion and looked at Lone Moon, who looked equally confused. What happened to Master? Did she go back crying just now? Their expressions changed, and then they chased after her. When they pushed the door, they found that it would not budge. "It's locked." I Ching subconsciously wanted to conjure a seal to cast a spell, but Lone Moon suddenly grabbed his hand. "Wait." His expression darkened. "I'll go. Littling is different from other children. After all, he was someone who had taken care of his niece before, and could be considered experienced." I Ching hesitated for a moment before retracting his hand. Chapter 433. Lone Moon did not use sorcery to open the door, but directly turned into a wisp of smoke and floated in through the window. He looked around, but did not see Little Ying's figure. But in the middle of the quilt on the bed, there was a big bulge, shaking and moving, and from time to time there were suppressed sobs. Lone Moon's heart ached, and suddenly had the urge to go out and beat Chef up. "Bastard! What did he just say to my little princess?" He clenched his fists by his side and suppressed the urge to rush over and hug her. He stepped forward and said gently, "Why is Littling crying? Did someone bully you?" The cotton ball on the bed stiffened, the sobs stopped, but there was no response. "Can you tell Daddy if you have any grievances?" He continued to persuade. "Is it Mommy? Daddy will help you beat him up. How about that?" "No, no," a sobbing retorted immediately from under the quilt. "It's not Mommy." "Then who is it?" She did not speak again. "Can't you tell Daddy?" There was silence again, and after a while an even lower voice came. "Littling can't say." Lone Moon's expression darkened, and he thought for a while and said, "If you can't tell Daddy, then can you tell cute little bunny?" With that said, he directly separated a trace of divine perception, and once again cast an incarnation sorcery, this time not into Shinjing, but into a snow-white bunny, and placed it at the head of the bed. "Then Daddy will go out first, you talk to little bunny." With that said, he turned, opened the door with a creak and walked out. The room instantly became quiet. After a while, that cotton ball moved, and from the side, A small tear appeared, revealing a little crying face. A pair of eyes still with traces of tears looked at the bunny at the head of the bed, hesitated for a while, and then reached out to put the little bunny into the quilt. She carefully stroked the rabbit's head. The more she touched it, the thicker the mist in her eyes became. The tears that had just stopped fell down once more. She bit her lower lip, as if she was trying hard not to cry out loud. She cried so hard that she even hiccuped, and after a while, she began to chat with the bunny while hiccuping. Little bunny, is littling a bad baby? Little rabbit, littling misses big sister so much. I want to go home so much. But littling can't go back. Littling must not go back. If littling goes back, big sister, we'll get hurt again. It's all little Ying's fault. If not for protecting littling, big sister wouldn't have. Littling can do it alone. Littling has daddy and mommy. She can definitely do it. Littling won't go back. She definitely won't go back. Littling was very brave. Littling was very strong. Littling doesn't want big sister anymore. She tried her best to hold back her tears and clenched her small fists. Her voice became heavier and heavier, as if she was cheering herself on. It was so sensible that it broke one's heart. It was as if she was forcing herself to grow up. Outside the door. Lone Moon. I Ching. 3-year-old Shening. What exactly did she experience? To be able to force herself to leave at such a young age to protect her own family. No wonder. She was completely different from the last time. She accepted him and Chef so quickly, even when they didn't explain who they were. No wonder she didn't mention Xinjing, even once these few days. No wonder she was so obedient and sensible, unlike other children. It seemed like she knew from the start that she was no longer in the world before. So it didn't matter who they were. What was important was that she felt that she had successfully brought Xinjing away from danger. This was the only thing that the 3-year-old Shening felt she could do for the sister she loved the most. Even if she had to leave her. Master. I Ching felt a sharp pain in his heart. He felt like he couldn't breathe. He turned and wanted to go in. Lone Moon couldn't help but turn and push the door. Damn it. Xinjing must have won some universal prize to be able to pick up a sister like Littling. The two of them were about to push the door open when suddenly the whole ground shook. There was a sudden roar around them. They saw that the immortal peak not far away, as if it was under some heavy pressure, began to crack. Even the palaces on it turned into ruins. The protective mountain array was activated, covering the whole heavenly palace. An especially strange and familiar aura swept over in this direction. Lone Moon and I Ching were both shocked. Their eyes widened. This aura was an invader. Sure enough, in the next moment, there was a loud rumble, and the sky seemed to have been split open. The blue realm gate suddenly opened, and an ice crystal peak that was taller than all the floating peaks in the invincible heavenly palace passed through the realm gate. Compared to the slow speed of the last time, the glacier appeared very quickly this time. Lone Moon and I Ching didn't even have the chance to seal the realm gate before the glacier appeared in front of them. Their hearts sank. What was going on? They had clearly sealed that mushroom world out of the plane. Why would these invaders still appear? Unless they didn't come from that small world. Elder Lone Moon. Elder I Ching. Yu Hong suddenly rushed in. She came directly on her sword, holding a communication stone in her hand. She didn't even have time to salute before she said anxiously, "The celestial emperors from all the continents have sent messages, saying that a glacier exactly like this one appeared in the heavenly palace. They're asking the sect master to come out of seclusion and help." Shit. Lone Moon couldn't help but curse. These invaders were all out this time? They were actually from all the continents' heavenly palaces. Where did they come from? They should have come along the river of forgetfulness. I Ching suddenly said. What? Lone Moon was shocked. I Ching gestured for him to look inside his sea of consciousness. Lone Moon hurriedly closed his eyes to take a look. On the plane tree that was originally golden in his sea of consciousness, white lines suddenly appeared. Like meridians, they covered the entire tree, and even extended to every branch and leaf. These were originally the positions of the river of forgetfulness. Now it had turned completely white. Shorty, Lone Moon suddenly remembered. Holy shit. They're controlling Shorty. He should have thought of it earlier. Shorty went to the mushroom world with him. If even he was controlled, how could she be fine? But they were in a hurry to seal that small world. In addition, something happened to Shening, so they didn't think of her. That's not right. It's not that they didn't think of it, but they subconsciously ignored her? They must have done something during the previous invasion. I Ching also thought of this, so all of them subconsciously ignored this matter, giving them time to move. Chapter 434. Longman's expression darkened. He thought for a while, and then turned to instruct. Yu Hong, pass down the order that all disciples are not allowed to leave the array. Also, ask Little Black to rush back to the demon world through the sex transportation array. Gather all the sky fiends and demons, and send them to all the continent's heavenly palaces as reinforcements. He knows what to do. Then ask Lan Hua to strengthen the protective mountain array with demonic qi, and cover the sky from the sun. Yu Hong understood immediately. Yes, Elder. With that said, she flew out on her sword again. The glacier outside the heavenly palace seemed to grow bigger. The ground shook even more violently. There was a faint rumbling sound in the sky, but there was no sign of anyone. It was obvious that the other party was already attacking the protective mountain array. Master. I Ching thought of the person in the house. His heart sank. He turned and rushed in. He carried the person on the bed whose tears had not yet dried. He turned and opened the passage to the divine realm. He put little Ing on the thick carpet before squatting down and hurriedly said, Master, be good and wait here. No matter what happens, don't go out by yourself, okay? She seemed to feel something. She was very calm and nodded obediently. Okay. I Ching got up. He was about to open the passage to go back, when Little Ing suddenly reached out and tugged at his sleeve. Mother, will you come back for me? Of course. He nodded hard. Once things are settled, I will come for you immediately. Pinky promise. She raised her little hand eagerly to reach his finger. I Ching's heart ached for no reason. He hooked her little finger and shook it. Pinky promise. Only then did she smile and return the rabbit to him. This is for Daddy. You have to come and get Little Ing quickly. Okay. I Ching nodded. He looked at her again and opened the passage to go back. Almost at the same time he returned to the house. The rabbit in his hand turned into a wisp of divine perception and returned to Lone Moon. Is everything settled? Lone Moon turned to look at him. Yes. Yes. I Ching nodded. His expression was unprecedentedly serious. Let's go. The flute in Lone Moon's hand flashed and turned into a long sword. This is going to be a tough battle, and there would be no more reinforcements. He raised his head and looked at the sky that was filled with demonic qi. At this moment, there were already many figures that looked exactly like him. He directly flew out. I Ching also summoned his immortal sword and flew up. The invasion this time caught everyone off guard. The entire river of forgetfulness was already under the control of these invaders. Their people had already invaded every small world in this plane, and it was only a matter of time before they completely occupied and replaced it. This was a complete reversal of the previous situation. The immortal world had become the only place in the entire plane that hadn't been conquered by them. If they couldn't defend it, then the entire plane would really be theirs. And the reason why these people were in such a hurry to attack this place was also very obvious. It was because of Shening, the manager, so leaving her in the divine realm was the safest. Invincible sect must be besieged by the enemy's main forces. There were more people who had replicated Father Nyo's abilities than before. Once the two of them flew out of the protective mountain array, they immediately mobilized all the sword qi in their bodies. Instantly, a sky full of swords appeared and directly attacked those who were attacking the array. Thousands of immortal swords whistled past, and in a moment, a large number of familiar figures fell. In the next moment, more people surrounded them, as if there was no end to them. I Ching's sword qi exploded from all over his body. He directly summoned his sword intent. In a moment, several white sword dragons rose into the sky and attacked in all directions. In the blink of an eye, they rushed through a large number of enemies. There are so many people, there must be a leader. Lone Moon reminded loudly. Behind him, I Ching frowned. He released his divine perception and scanned the crowd. Indeed, he found that there was an exceptionally different aura above the tall glacier. It was unexpectedly also somewhat familiar. Found it, he directly rushed in that direction. The other party seemed to know their intentions. They attacked even more fiercely. Some people even directly self-destructed near them. Lone Moon blocked the attacks from all directions, while setting up a defensive array. To them, who had complete control of the assistant's abilities, the cultivation of these people could not cause too much harm to them. It was just that ants could bite an elephant to death. For a while, they could not break out of the encirclement. Lone Moon gritted his teeth and said in a low voice, "I'll block these people. You go over." With that said, he conjured a seal with both hands. A Dharma spell with a soaring sword chi attacked directly in the direction of the glacier. Instantly a passage was created. I Ching flew out directly without hesitation. In the next moment, a large number of figures appeared again. Lone Moon once again used his sword to block those people. Working together, they finally flew above the glacier. Before they could land, I Ching instantly felt a familiar sense of suppression. It was exactly the same as what he felt at the border of the immortal and demonic realm. It was as if all the abilities in his body were sealed. But this time, he already knew what it was. His heart sank. In his sea of consciousness, the Taiji diagram automatically rotated. In an instant, that strange pressure disappeared without a trace. He followed the path of that energy and counterattacked. In the next moment he heard a cracking sound. Suddenly, a small crack appeared on the glacier under his feet. A voice filled with doubt suddenly rang out. A red figure suddenly appeared on the originally empty glacier. It was Shorty, whom they had not seen for a few days. She stood on the glacier with an unfamiliar smile on her face. She was clearly smiling, but the words that came out of her mouth did not have any warmth at all. "In just a few days, you guys have actually grasped true power so quickly." I Ching's expression darkened. He said with certainty, "An assistant from a different plane." The person's smile deepened. "It seems that my estimation was wrong. To get rid of you, I might have to spend more time." She raised her hand. Instantly, the glacier under her feet seemed to come alive. It turned into ice thorns and attacked I Ching. I Ching used his sword chi to cut the ice thorns. But the ice did not stop. Instead, it directly broke into mini icicles. Once again it covered the sky and the earth, and the strange and oppressive aura around them became even heavier. Faintly there was a familiar aura. That was Shorty's reincarnation power. I Ching's attack speed became even faster. He kept cutting the ice thorns. But the more he attacked, the more ice thorns there were. As if they had a mind of their own, they prevented I Ching from taking a step closer to the other party. "The abilities of your plane assistants really surprise me. They actually have such special abilities." The person in the middle laughed coldly. "Unfortunately, I am not an ordinary assistant. Even if you have grasped true power, you can't hurt me, who has already experienced many planes." As he spoke, he raised his hand, and an even greater pressure attacked I Ching. The power seemed to surpass the plane, and it was so strong that even the surrounding space began to distort. Even Lone Moon, who was not far away, paused for a moment, and his body was instantly slashed by the spell. The invincible sex array formation beneath them was also broken. "No matter how special you are, you can only become a part of our power." I Ching felt a sweetness in his heart. The Tai Chi diagram in his body rotated even faster. He took a deep breath, and once again blocked the surrounding icicles. He could not lose. Master was still waiting for him. He gritted his teeth. The ability of an assistant exploded instantly. He directly caught the strange pressure that swept towards him. Red light flashed all over his body. A huge fire surrounded his body. There were streaks of white lightning in the fire. In the next moment, he turned around and instantly transformed into his original form. A huge golden dragon rose into the sky, but it was completely different from the previous dragon form. On the huge dragon's body, there was a pair of huge wings that looked like they were made of flames. They seemed to be burning something. With just a light wave of his hand, large swathes of true phoenix fire swept across the entire sky like wildfire. Everything in its path was instantly turned into nothingness. The overwhelming icicles in the surroundings disappeared in an instant. Even the imposters who looked like Lone Moon nearby were affected and turned into ashes. How is this possible? The assistant on the glacier finally had a different expression. She looked at the huge dragon in the sky in disbelief. How can the power of an assistant alone do this? Her expression changed. Nobody knew what she was thinking. Her whole body emitted a dazzling white light. Even the entire glacier under her feet lit up. An even more shocking pressure rushed towards I Ching. Streaks of light swept over like sharp blades. The ground immediately rumbled. Wherever the light passed, everything, including the floating mountain, was instantly cut in half. The entire heavenly palace began to collapse. The disciples in the sect had no choice but to dodge in all directions. But they were attacked by Father Nio's replicas. I Ching had no choice but to turn back and block those who took the opportunity to attack him. But he saw that several streaks of light suddenly began to converge. They weaved into a huge net and swept towards I Ching. "Chef!" Lone Moon panicked. He shouted loudly to warn him. But the other party did not dodge. Instead, the lightning around his body became brighter and brighter. In a short while, it had already covered his whole body. In an instant, a huge bolt of lightning that was even thicker than his body struck back at I Ching. With a few loud sounds, the lightning directly suppressed those streaks of light and hit the tall glacier. Beautiful. Lone Moon could not help but give his teammate a thumbs up. There was a crack below, and a crack as thick as an arm appeared on the glacier. Lone Moon was just about to get rid of the imposters around him in one go, when he suddenly saw a few figures flash in front of him. Was it an illusion? Why did it feel like there were fewer people surrounding him? He released his divine sense to check. It was not an illusion. There were indeed fewer imposters around. Subconsciously, he looked at the crack in the glacier in front of him. His eyes darkened. Something in his mind was connected with a ding sound. His eyes widened abruptly, and he reacted instantly. He turned to look at I Ching, who had already flown back to stop the enemy from attacking Invincible Sect. He shouted, "Chef, these people are all controlled by that assistant. You just have to use all your strength to destroy him." Dragon E, who was in the sky, immediately reacted. He turned and rushed back. With a sweep of his dragon tail, a large number of people were swept away. Lone Moon took the opportunity to rush over. At the same time, he waved his hand, and the sky full of swords rained down on the glacier. The expression of the person on the glacier changed. He raised his hand, and the people who had already attacked Invincible Sect immediately abandoned the disciples and rushed towards the two of them. But it was too late. Lone Moon and I Ching had already flown above the glacier. Panic flashed in the eyes of the assistant who controlled Shorty. He was naturally not afraid of dealing with one assistant, but two. He once again released that kind of white light, but it was dispersed by Chef's lightning. I Ching transformed back into his human form. The two of them raised their swords and rushed towards him. "Wait! Your original source is still in my body." Seeing that there was no way to escape, the person hurriedly shouted, "If you kill me, she will die too. Without the original source, your plane is also finished." Original source? The two of them who landed on the ground paused. He was talking about Shorty. "Father Nio." I Ching looked at Lone Moon. "Beat him up first." Lone Moon did not listen to him at all. He put away his sword and punched the other party's face, directly knocking him to the ground. I Ching frowned. He thought of the last time when Father Nio and the others were controlled. Master seemed to have done the same. He made up his mind. So he set up a defensive array around the two of them and joined the violent beating team. "Wait! You can't do this to..." "Ah! Stop! Lunatic! Ah!" At that moment, the entire glacier reverberated with a certain otherworldly assistant's screams. The two of them did not hold back at all. Every punch was imbued with the assistant's ability, and they especially aimed for the face. In a short while, the person in front of them was no longer recognizable. As if he could not take it anymore, a white light suddenly shot out from Shorty's body and flew towards the west at an extremely fast speed. "He's out!" I Ching reminded. At the same time, a ray of true phoenix fire chased after him. Lone Moon also released his sword seal at the same time. An indistinguishable scream sounded instantly. That ray of light disappeared under the fire and rain of swords. In the next moment, the figures that were attacking the defensive array crazily disappeared. Even the glacier under their feet turned into countless spots of light and dimmed. The two of them only felt that the ground under them was empty. Lone Moon controlled his sword and caught Shorty, whose head was already swollen like a pig's. Subconsciously, he glanced at that horrifying face and silently looked away. They were trying to save someone just now, and definitely not because of Shen Ying's previous attack on someone else. What was different from the previous time was that Shorty woke up very quickly this time. Before the two of them could fly back, her eyes moved and opened. Before she could speak, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Shorty! Lone Moon's heart sank. Were they that heavy-handed? But she completely ignored the injuries on her body. She looked around frantically. Elder, the river of forgetfulness. Don't worry, we've already dealt with that assistant. Assistant? But her eyes widened and her expression became even more anxious. She reached out and tugged at Lone Moon's sleeve. No, it's not him. The one controlling the river of forgetfulness is not the assistant. There's another. There's another scarier. The two of them were shocked. Scarier than the assistant, could it be the manager? They originally thought that only worlds without managers would invade other planes. Could it be that they actually had a manager? Master. I Ching's face paled. He immediately turned and opened a passage to the divine realm. Chapter 435. Lone Moon cast a spell to send little Shorty back to the sect, and then followed them in. The scenery in front of them changed. In an instant, they were under the pitch-black night sky. They looked around and saw Shenning sitting on the carpet not far away, carrying a small immortal boat. Her eyes lit up when she saw them. The two of them heaved a sigh of relief and walked over. However, before they could heave a sigh of relief, an unfamiliar male voice suddenly sounded. So you're hiding here? In an instant, an irresistible force swept towards them from behind. Lone Moon and I Ching were shocked. They hurriedly turned around with their swords, but they were still unable to block the force. They were sent flying by the force and landed heavily on the ground. In an instant, their chi and blood surged and they spat out blood. The spatial passageway that had just closed suddenly opened up, as if someone had forcefully torn it open. A man in a black robe stepped in. Unexpectedly, the newcomer's appearance was very ordinary. It was an extremely ordinary face, the kind of face that could not be found in a crowd. But he exuded a terrifying aura, completely different from the two assistants before. It was as if he was suppressed by an absolute level. They could not resist at all. This was the manager of a different plane. No wonder I couldn't find her even after searching the entire small world. I have to thank you for leading the way. That's why I could find this place. The man laughed, looking at I Ching and Lone Moon mockingly. Their hearts sank. They were too careless. This person was hiding on purpose. His goal was to follow them and find Shen Ying's location. Daddy, Mommy. Littling looked confused. Her little mind had no idea what was going on. She looked at the two people who suddenly fell to the ground, got up, and subconsciously wanted to walk over. Master, don't come over. I Ching shouted anxiously. Littling, listen and don't move. Lone Moon also hurriedly stopped her. Littling stopped in her tracks. Indeed, she obeyed and did not move. But the person opposite had already turned to look at her. The corner of his mouth curled up into a malicious smile. So you're the manager of this plane? His eyes narrowed, as if a trace of disappointment flashed across them. After a while he said with some sarcasm, so weak. I thought that with such a powerful assistant, the manager would be even more outstanding. I didn't expect it to be so weak. Could it be that all the power was given to them? He seemed to have found the reason. The disdain in his eyes deepened. He looked at Shen Ying, as if he was looking at a dead person. This plane actually chose such a stupid manager. That means it's destined to be mine. With that said, he walked directly in Shen Ying's direction. Every step he took was filled with murderous intent. Even the terrifying aura around him became heavier. The entire divine realm seemed to be unable to withstand this kind of coercion. It began to shake. Even the plane tree in the middle was rustling, as if it had been sucked dry of all its nutrients. Master! I Ching used all the strength in his body to try and stop him, but he was completely unable to resist the increasing pressure on his body. He used all his strength to get up, but was once again pressed to the ground. He could even hear the sound of his inner core breaking. Master! Master! Shunning! Lone Moon was also burning with anxiety, but there was nothing he could do. Not only his body, but even his primordial spirit felt like it was being crushed by someone. It looked like it was going to collapse at any time. Go Shunning! Littling still looked confused. As if sensing the current situation, there was more panic in her eyes. She subconsciously retreated, but completely did not know where to hide. She could only watch as the stranger in front of her got closer and closer. There was a strange smile on the corner of his mouth. In less than a moment, the other party was already in front of her. He raised his hand toward her. White light flashed in his hand. He was about to swing it at the defenseless Shining. I Ching's eyes widened. Boundless fear suddenly surged up and took over his whole body. There seemed to be something crazy surging up in his body, breaking some kind of restraint. There was a resounding sound. He did not know where the strength came from, but it directly broke through the suppression on his body. In an instant, it appeared in front of Shining and blocked the other party's attack. But the other party was after all the manager of a different plane. How could a mere immortal sword stop him? In the next moment, the immortal sword in his hand broke. The white light in the other party's hand instantly landed on I Ching's shoulder. Like a sharp knife, it cut down from his shoulder, directly cutting off his entire arm. Instantly blood splattered everywhere. The person was stunned. As if he did not expect that the other party could break through his suppression, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. In the next moment Lone Moon, who was beside him, also rushed over. In an instant, he summoned a rain of thousands of swords to attack the other party, forcing the person to retreat. Chef! He looked worriedly at the pale-faced person who had lost an arm. With a turn of his hand, the sky full of immortal swords once again attacked the person opposite him. But none of the swords hit the person opposite him. The person's figure flashed. As if they had hit something invisible, the swords directly passed through the other party's body and fell to the ground. Indeed, not an ordinary assistant. The person's cold gaze swept across the two of them. The sarcasm in his eyes grew, as if he was looking at two people who were struggling on their deathbed. Actually able to break through my suppression? It seems like the two of you are almost at the limit of an assistant. With this kind of ability, it's better to get rid of it as soon as possible. I can't let the two of you continue to grow. With that said, his expression darkened. Suddenly, he pointed in Lone Moon's direction. In an instant, a ray of light flew out at an extremely fast speed. Lone Moon did not even have time to react. All he felt was a pain in his arm. In the next moment, the sword in his hand fell to the ground with a thud, along with his hand. The rain of swords that had been attacking the other party also stopped and fell to the ground with a clatter. But the manager of the other plane's fingers tightened, as if he was holding something. In the next moment, a few rope-like white rays of light appeared around the two of them, tying them up, who were still bleeding profusely. The other party raised his hand, and the two of them immediately flew up. The light ropes wrapped around the two of them, tighter and tighter, and the huge pressure in the air became even stronger. The two of them were already covered in blood. The rays of light were like sharp blades that cut through their skin, sinking deeper and deeper. It was as if even their souls were being cut apart, and their consciousness was beginning to blur. Shining, who had not moved all this while, widened her eyes in horror. She looked up at the two people in front of her, and her body began to tremble uncontrollably. Even the little immortal boat in her hands fell to the ground. Daddy! Mommy! She reached out her little hands, as if trying to pull the two of them, but she could not reach them at all. Instead, her hands were stained red by the two of them. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.